We want to call this meeting to order. I'm still waiting on a few of my committee members to come, but we're going to start anyway. And we do have some that's joining us via Zoom. So we thank them for joining us as well. If y'all have paid any attention to your agenda for today, I think we have some good presenters here today. And the time that we have allotted for this is from 9 to 1. And the reason why we did the 9 to 1 is because we don't want to rush anyone in their presentations today. And we want to allow a little bit more time for our committee members to ask questions so that we can get as many of those questions answered. So that going forward, possibly around the December timeframe, we want to start trying to work on legislations to address transitional housing. Because we do know that that's part of reentry as well, is to make sure that we provide some good places and not confined to one particular part of the state, but we're going to try to utilize as much of the state as we can to make sure that people can return closer to their families or closer to their homes or closer to jobs if they're able to find work when they are released versus keeping them in a particular area and then having to leave that area and go somewhere else without having anywhere to stay. So without any further ado, we're gonna start with Mississippi Department of Corrections, and I see that we have the commissioner here. We thank him for being here today. We'll ask him to come up and approach the podium or whoever he may have with him as presenters from MDOC at this time.
Okay, thank you. Senator, it's an honor to be here with you today. And when you and I and Carrie met, you talked about your thoughts and feelings that we should have more housing scattered across the state in smaller amounts. Not only you weren't critical of the houses we have, but you were saying we just need to expand it and move out. And so we focused on doing that today. And we have with us Nathan Blevins, who will talk about some of the programs that Probation and Parole has, but also we have Miss Shalay McDowd. I'd like to introduce her. She is a young lady that works for us. She's a graduate of Mississippi State, and she has worked to come up with some ideas that I think y'all are going to really like and be impressed with. So Miss Shalay, come on up without further ado and show you things.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning. Good morning to the chairman and also good morning to the committee. As he said, I'm Ms. McDowell. Previously, we were able to make some groundbreaking, record-breaking mass noise in Greenwood, Mississippi. The ladies at Delta Correctional Facility have now been given their own transitional facility that is housed in LaFleur County. LaFleur County, along with the neighboring counties, has always been a dry area when it comes to transitional housing. I'm a native of Greenwood, Mississippi. So I was able to team up with some community partners and an agency by the name of DePaul University to create what is now called Madeline's House. If I can have this passed out to y'all so you can see the house. So the house is pretty much self-sufficient. DePaul has done the work and purchased the home, but the home is completely supported by the churches and by the communities. I've come up with a phase 1 and phase 2 plan to see if we could possibly make this work, and I know that we will across the state. Phase 1 includes finding a host church in each area to serve as a liaison. If you could, with your imagination, just think about a spider, how you have that central hub of that spider and then the legs extend. That central part will be hosted by those churches who have all of the population, who have the ministers, who have the nonprofits, who have those who already have a background with counseling, drug addiction, alcohol, your retired teachers, those people who own properties already. Everything you basically need is already in a Sunday morning congregation, but we're just challenging the church to be a church at this point. And we're also going to reach out to them to do more legwork to create more communication and connections with the churches. So we would host forums in these churches. That meant going on Sunday mornings and having a 10-minute slot during their Sunday morning services to educate those people, to help them understand the numbers when it comes to recidivism, those that are returning to their towns and how they could get involved. We would encourage them to use those rental properties that are owned by some of the members or those church extensions, such as those basement areas or those gyms or those classroom areas that a lot of churches have, to turn those in transitional homes or transitional facilities and have those people that are in that congregation donate. Then we will follow back up by having community forums where those people who own those nonprofit, our workforce development teams, our employees to come into those churches to host seminars, bringing in probation and parole so that they can see that we are going to be just as active in our reentry process as far as allowing them to come into us and us going into them. It's not just a one-part thing. It's going to really take everybody hand in hand to make this work when it comes to reducing recidivism. So in the next phase, because every town and every area is different, we could also use city councils and mayors. There are a lot of vacant facilities around the state of Mississippi. Some of these buildings will be donated, could be donated to us in hopes of turning these into programs that are specifically ran by these cities to create almost what you would look at as an ecosystem. You allow the city to have their own transitional. Then you connect them to city employment. And then you connect them to those people in the community who would be willing to house them afterwards in a step up 1, 2, and 3 program. Especially because a lot of times once people gain employment, they want their independence. So why not connect them with those people in the community who are family-friendly renters? They're not afraid to say, well, hey, I've seen this person work for the city. I've seen this person accumulate income from the city. Why not rent to them and allow them to have their independence to transition fully back into those neighboring communities? There's a budget set aside of about $500,000, and we come up with a plan to see if we could possibly use those for step-up stipends. We don't want them to feel like we're just leaving them on the front door or we're asking them to do all the work, but that money could be allocated towards step-up stipends that would go towards incentives and 6-month programs, startup costs, or to purchase hygiene, toiletries for that offender every single month for the 6 months that they are there. In the midst of that, I've also found that it's going to take us being willing to hit the grounds running. So we already have those individuals that work out in the community. Hopefully you can see this map, but there are program coordinators that are offering probation and parole. These program coordinators are already in the community throughout the state. And so all we will be doing is advancing their relationships with those ministries, with those congregations. A lot of times when I've served as a branch director myself over the 33 counties in the Northern Hemisphere before I transition over to this, there are ministries that are active, but they don't know ways to be active besides just the normal. Hey, calling and saying, is there any way that you could offer shelter? Is there any way that you could offer clothing? But we're bringing them into a closer relationship with us to find a niche in every single area, whether that be transitional housing, offering programs, picking up people from the bus station. So we're just calling on the church now to be a part of the church and help us with communication, connections, and making sure that there is a soft handoff between all of our agency partners, between those that are already in the community, and given what the state has provided with us to help ensure that these facilities come up, and these offenders are knowingly loved, nurtured, and rehabilitated. And that's going to happen with community support all the way around. A lot of times they cannot return home. Bridges have been burnt. So you call on the people who will call first to love them, to nurture them, to plot, to uproot, to plant seed in them, and to help them get back on their feet. And then I think we will really see a turnaround within the state.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate that. But are you aware of the pilot program that we started over at the CMCF?
Yes, sir.
That allows up to 25 individuals right now to be to have the opportunity to go to work every day, earn a real living, and so that when they are released and they then there's a possibility that they have real monies for apartments, they have real monies to do those things. But we do realize that, just like you previously said, is that they still may have burned a bridge with their family or someone else, and they still need some help when they leave. And so we applaud you for finding places for these people to go. And I think that's going to be important going forward, because what I would like to do is to expand this program that we started at CMCF to every facility that we have in the state, so that people won't just have to try to find jobs in and around the Jackson area, but they may be able to find employment, whether it may be in the Delta, whether it may be on the Gulf Coast, or wherever it may be. And that's the whole purpose of doing what we're doing, is to make sure that when people are released, that they're released with the best opportunity that they can possibly have when they are released. And I do also know that there's a lot of people that have been released that didn't have these kind of opportunities. And whether we believe it or not, or whether we want to talk about it or not, but I do know that there are a lot of people who are homeless right now who were formerly incarcerated because they didn't have anywhere else to go or anything else to do. No financial means, no formal training, whether it was before or after prison. They never did have that opportunity. So I guess my question is that while we're looking at these church-based organizations to do, and I would like to expand that also beyond just the faith-based community. I want everybody to have an opportunity to be a part of this, but I just don't want it to be a stop and starting point with church-based organizations. We do want them involved as much as possible, but we want everybody in this, because we realize that this is not a deal where one component, meaning the churches, can fully handle all of this. And we just don't want to limit those people or limit them to the places where they can and cannot go. Does that make sense?
Like this is one of many programs we developed. And so Nathan's going to come up in a minute and talk about his part of it. But this is when you and I talked and Carrie talked about 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 all across the Mississippi, anywhere, that do not have anything, just get out, or they don't get out because they don't have an address. So here's an address, here's a place to go. So this is just one of 3 or 4 programs we have. The work release program you're talking about is very successful, and we're going to be talking about it later because it's going to require legislation. But anyway, she came up with this idea. I'm real proud of her for being energetic and coming up with a way to help the community and so forth. And that's the kind of employees we want, those that are passionate about helping inmates. So thank you so much. You did good.
Thank you. Is there any questions from anyone, any members of the committee? Senator Norwood, you're recognized.
Few questions, Mr. Chairman. It's only in the Greenwood area.
Yes, sir. This is the first one.
How many? I understood you said 2. It's 4 individuals. Or how many individuals?
This is it's a 4-bedroom home, and they're now looking to expand it to purchase another home as soon as this pilot takes off. The first lady is actually scheduled to be in the home tomorrow.
The condition for individuals to be, I guess, assigned there would be are they almost to be released, or are they, what are the conditions there?
These individuals have already made parole, they're nonviolent offenders, and some of them have also been only incarcerated for a minimum of 5 years.
Are they original residents of the area, or are they from all across?
They are from other areas. They are not originally from Greenwood.
And then you said $500,000. Now that was, what's the $500,000? Is that for all of the?
Yeah, so Senator, in addition to the normal funding for the transitional housing, we've worked with Senator Barnett and members of the Appropriations Committee to allocate spending authority of $500,000 out of the inmate welfare fund to get this project kind of moving in that direction.
So this facility is a part of that allocation.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it would be part of that, the program to move that program in the direction that it needs to go.
Now, who owns the house that, who owns the property that's?
DePaul is the company that purchased the home. And it's just completely supported by the neighboring community and also the ministries. So for example, the office for the case manager is actually housed in North Greenwood Baptist Church. So they attend church there. They're allowing them to utilize the space, but the home is operated and also owned by DePaul, which is a nonprofit organization.
Did they present to us? Did they make a presentation at the last? No. Paul did not. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the program is being operated by DePaul, or they just own the home?
They own the home and they are providing some services, and then the rest of the services is completely operated by those individuals out in the community.
Okay, because
So as you can see where it says like the budget and the finance, different things like that, then you'll see where they host community meals. So it's a 50-50 thing. 50% is operated by them and the other 50% is coming from those individuals in the community who have the skills.
as far as and a lot of this is just because we don't know. I don't want it to feel like it's a negative toward the program. Just, I think, just like Senator Norwood, kind of who owns it, what's going on. Because those are the questions generally our constituents ask us, and even people who are coming out of incarceration want to know. And the first thing they want to know is there a cost to the participant?
There is no cost. It does not cost the department or the state anything.
Okay. And is the state paying any cost?
No, sir.
Okay.
They're a nonprofit that normally deals with homelessness. This was actually their first time even tapping into the field of corrections and those who've been incarcerated.
And I'd looked at them briefly. I think there are 9 or 10 other cities, mostly very large cities in comparison to most of the cities we have in Mississippi. But so this is kind of a pilot program for DePaul a little bit in this formerly incarcerated population.
Yes, sir.
They primarily have focused on homelessness just for any reason, not particularly specific to corrections.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think I'll save my other questions for Mr. Blevins when we talk about, I guess, the monitoring from a legal standpoint, because the people that are living there most likely will be on parole or probation. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay.
And so we've already tied them into local LaFleur PNP office. The president actually came down, met with those officers that are in that office. They viewed the home, they toured the home. They've been active in the whole procedure.
Okay. And then the $500,000 is, I think, as you referenced it, stipends to help them purchase kind of basic items, necessities, toiletries, just getting them kind of going.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As a startup, to make sure that we are including them in the process of helping with them to have something rather than nothing at all.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any questions from any of the committee members that may be with us via Zoom? Commissioner Kane, you
Okay, let's let Nathan then talk about the transitional housing. And let me mention this while we're doing that. We've divided the way we operate with reentry, where the deputy commissioner for reentry, that one of them is over the reentry programs all the way up to the gate of the prison. And then Bradley Lum takes over with MDOC Works. And the chairman of that nonprofit is here with us, Max Phillips, today. But then he takes everything from there on out. So we've divided it. And so we're just going to talk about the transition house.
Thank you, Chairman. So just so we know exactly who we are, contracting with the transitional housing with DLC right now. Currently, we are in contract with Crossroads which is in Madison. You have Sober Living, which is in Meridian, and New Way, which is in Jackson, okay? And the total beds for all three of those is 105. And right now, the vacancy rate is 15. So as far as contract, those we pay $20 a day. They can't stay no more than 6 months. So those are the three locations that we're actually under contract with. Now, we do get calls, well, I get calls periodically of places throughout the state that would like to contract with us. So I guess that's something that the commissioner will look at going forward. But this is what we have as of right now. And I know the last meeting we had, there was a little confusion on who all we was actually in contract with. So this should pretty much clear it up. These are the three contracts that DOC is actually involved in.
Okay, and based on what I'm seeing here, we have Sober Living, Crossroads, and New Way. And that's the reason why we're having these meetings, is because when we just look at these three places that we have here and location, we realize that these are all centered in and around the Jackson area. So it limits individuals from having the opportunity to go anywhere else, if that makes sense to everyone. And so, again, that's my whole purpose, is to make sure that our transitional housing, or these places that we have that can assist, again, are not confined to one area of the state of Mississippi. Because we do know that everyone that's been released that may not have our address to go to are not necessarily from Rankin or Hines or Madison County. And I think that has been a problem that we have, and I'm sure someone will speak on this later. We may have people that have absconded and now find themselves back because they didn't have an address to go to or anything else when it was released, and now they find themselves back in the custody of the Department of Corrections. So again, going forward, and I just want to make sure that we try to tap into every possible place around the state that we possibly can. And I see here, and thank the young lady again for reaching out to DePaul for having this, but I do think that we have enough capable entities and individuals within the state of Mississippi who have more vested in their communities that we should be trying to reach out to help with this. I just think that there are a lot, and I think at the last meeting, we had an individual here from the Hattiesburg area with a faith-based organization that has been there for a long time that would be willing to do this. So again, my question is that, we try to reach out to every individual in the state that we can possibly find. Not saying that everybody may or may not meet the qualifications, but I do know, or I do think that we have more places around the state that does meet the qualifications or can meet the conditions of what we are trying to do, Commissioner. And
that's exactly what we're doing with Michelet and her program. And that's why we showed you the map with the 31 probation program people, as well as Bradley Lum has 10. And so these are job seekers and so forth that scattered all over Mississippi to help people find jobs and find employment as we prepare them to get out of prison with a skill and trade, but also to provide the housing. And that's what Ms. McDowell is going to be working to do that across the state. She's going to be statewide to see where all she can put these houses in, 4 or 5 beds at a time, like you mentioned to Carrie and I way back. So we're trying to follow exactly what you said, and we just give us a little time. I think she's going to be doing exactly what you want done, because that's our desire too. Everybody has to have somewhere to go all over Mississippi. We just can't focus in one place.
And while we're looking for the transitional housing, which is important, but we also need to be making sure that we talk to employers, because we need them to buy into this as well. And how many, because we know that Ingalls down on the coast is always looking for employment. And if we're gonna teach welding as a job skill while they're inside the prison, to move people to Madison County or Rankin or Forest County or to any of these three houses, it won't do them any good. But if Ingalls is willing to hire individuals, then we need to be talking to Ingalls about the employment opportunities. Therefore, if there's employment opportunities, then surely we should be able to find housing or temporary housing for these individuals when they're released, so that they can have somewhere to stay while they're working until they are able to really get up on their feet, if it's for 3 months, 6 months, or however long. And then when they are released, they have saved enough money or earned enough money there so that they can be able to get out and fully be back in the community. So I'm asking these questions and hoping that y'all are hearing what we're saying. Transitional houses is very important, but there's other components to this, and we need to make sure that we are talking to employers, because we don't want to get into the habit of just releasing people. I know it's going to happen. Truly, everybody is not going to be able to find a job or dream job when they get out, but we do want to make sure that there is employment available, or the possibility of employment available when they are released.
Right, and that's, our welding schools are working right now, and also we just opened a cosmetology school, the forklift school working for women and for men. So these schools in operation, and at some point we have a video shows you all the different schools that's operating at this point. So there's about 1,700 inmates being paid now to go to school and to work, and these schools are skills and trade, and Bradley's working really hard with us to find them jobs. So we can get out of prison and do all the soft skills we want, but if we don't match you up with an employer, you're not gonna get a job because of your felony. And so that's what we're trying to get around by having actual job seekers, we call them, to go out and find a job, match him up with a job. The probation guy is going to be there with him. He's going to work with Nathan to see that he stays on the job, he gets drug tested, and try to assure the employer that he's going to be a worthy employee, that we're going to monitor and keep control of him. As long as he's on parole, we're going to hold him accountable on this job. So we have to have jobs to cut our recidivism rate. And that's what we're going to do.
Okay. Is there any other questions by anyone else on the committee? You got a question?
I do, yes.
Senator Sparks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blevins, from the standpoint of the housing you listed as 105 beds that were contracted out at $20 a day, that is something, was that put out to bid at some point, and these three companies are who qualified or applied?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Not too long.
All right, and is that a cap on, because if I did the math correctly, that's 105 beds at $20 a day equates to about $766,500 a year.
If all the beds are full, that's
It-
right. We're currently spending about just under 50,000 a month.
All right, well then, that you've anticipated my next question. Are we paying for empty beds?
No, we're not.
Okay. So if the bed's utilized, we're paying for it if it's not.
Correct.
In these three facilities, is there a cost to the participant? Same question I asked earlier of Ms. McDowell as it relates to the program she's doing. Is there a cost to the?
Participant? I don't think so. We paid the $20 per day. I think that's all we pay. And as far as I know, there's no cost to the participant.
Because I want people to have an opportunity to go back to work, but I've experienced this as an attorney dealing with folks who are incarcerated, formerly incarcerated. There's a lot of people out there that want to help. There's a lot of people in the faith-based community that want to help. And, I personally feel that'd be a great place to start.
Right.
But we're guilty of monetization. And I want people to be able to operate in the black, for profit, whatever terminology they want to use is. But what we want to make sure we know is what's actual cost to house someone, because we need to be comparing apples to apples. If we have a group like DePaul who's coming in and has bought a structure and says, you can live here for free for 12 months what we would like to do though is to be able to have the state come in and do some stipends out of the inmate welfare fund to help them get on their feet. That's one pathway. And if we can replicate that across areas where, you know, churches are kind of adopting this as a mission, because if you keep it to 4 to 10, you know, people maybe in that community area, they can probably handle that. That's one pathway. Another pathway is kind of what we've been doing, your major city areas. We're just going to put you back where the most population is, which may not be the best. And then we have what the chairman, I think, is focused on is where are the jobs? And because the jobs are going to dictate most likely the success as we attack avoiding recidivism. So I think, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong on this, where the jobs are, the rents are high. Where the jobs are not, the rents are lower. So the more you go toward where the jobs are, the more of a struggle you're going to have housing meeting this mark. So if all we're paying is $20 a day, that's $600 a month. That's for a bed. That could be a bed in a 4-bedroom house. And I do that 4 times. I got $2,400 now.
Right.
I'm at market. But we've got to make sure, and I just ask that to everyone, that we're comparing apples to apples, because at some point we may rise to the level where we have housing near the jobs that costs more. But if we have people who are willing to participate and say, hey, we'll do it at $20 a day from the state, and we're going to ask for $20 a day from the participant, depending on what kind of job they have, we may be able to do that. So I don't want us to box ourselves in, not only regionally, but also as it relates to the moving market, as it relates to rent. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. It makes a lot of sense. Now, the $20 a day that we're paying, now these participants that's actually in the house, you know, that's something maybe the transitional houses could attest to. You know, I don't know I know some go out and work, you know, where the money's applied and all that may be in reference to what you're saying, where that's some of the money that they're using. But this is all that DOC
Right.
pays for the room. sir.
And those are 2 different questions. I
Okay.
want to know what the taxpayers are paying
Yes, sir.
through DOC, but I also want to know what that participant is expected to do, because if we send them out to work, and I've dealt with even some of our facilities that are more rehab type facilities, you're going to come in, you're going to be allowed to live here, you're going to have to be gainfully employed, we're going to drive you back and forth to work. But then there becomes a point where we get your first month's pay, and then we get 60 cents of every dollar after that. I don't want to set us up for that system either. I do want people to be participative. I pay a mortgage or I pay a rent, and I want them to be able, that's that independence we're looking for. It's not just independence in living, it's independence in operation. And we want to move them in that direction. But to me, giving them a clear start is best. But are we capped, or is this a budgetary internal to MDOC at $766,500 a year? Or do we just happen to have a contract with 105 beds?
So could you ask that again, Senator? I didn't really understand.
In other words, we got 105 beds that if they're all full, we're paying $20 a day. That would be about $750,000.
Yeah.
If we had a system come online somewhere near Ingalls that had 20 units, do we have the ability within our current budgetary status to say, we're going to bring on 20 more beds?
Yes,
Okay.
I think we do, yes.
All right. Do you have any idea how many more beds we could bring on line?
Probably as many as we needed to. So this went out as a procurement and we got responses based on that. So then you have to think that we'd have to try re-procurement. We have contracts with those groups. Would we have to re-procure? And we could do that, pretty quickly and pretty easily, but we're kind of locked in right now with the group that responded. And to be fair to everybody, we'd probably have to re-procure it. That wouldn't take very long at all. We already have the roadmap in place to do it.
Well, that's just kind of my question, because if it's a flat fee, and that's where I was working my way to, is with everything that's being paid, if we're paying $20 a day and it's a flat fee, if someone else comes online that says we too can do it for $20 a day, I want us to follow whatever rules and
Sure.
guidelines we have to follow for procurement. But if we've set that as the baseline, then people know what's out there that's available to potentially be helpful to expand to areas where
Yeah.
industry is.
Yeah.
My question is, going back to what Senator Sparks just said, if there is an opportunity for someone on the coast that may be around Ingalls or somewhere that's willing to do this and reach out to MDOC, are you all prepared to make those necessary visits in a timely manner to make sure that these places are above board, they're ready to do what they're supposed to do, so that we don't hold up the process of getting individuals back to these areas where there are jobs?
So yes, Senator, I mean, if they reach out to us, then we would definitely go and make those arrangements to go visit and put the steps in place with Mr. McDonald to try to get them on board.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Sparks?
And that's, and I'll go back to that again. We had spoken, and I don't think they'll mind that we talked to them, because we did, but Ashley Furniture up in Northeast Mississippi, and they are one of the largest employers in Northeast Mississippi. And then we have Milwaukee Tool that is about to open a phenomenal facility over in the Grenada area. That's where jobs are. Is there the possibility that if we had, and I don't want to use the word temporary, but to a certain degree, there's some housing structures out there this day and time that we're not having to build brick and mortar or buy brick and mortar, but there may be things that are available if an industry wants to partner with us. And this is one of the things the chairman did a year or two ago, was allowing legislation that allows an employer to maybe not garnish your check, but deduct willingly from your check to contribute toward your probation fees, your fines. Maybe it would be housing included to do the drug testing. I think, to me, that's what's going to be most impactful, is going to be, and I'd love to have a faith-based organization that would almost adopt every one of these communities to, or multiple, to encourage them in other ways. But from the financial structure portion, is that if we have industries that are willing to partner, there's housing that is available that can be put in place almost overnight to say, we're going to do 10, we're going to do 20 units. And I just want to know that there may be some, and I'm sure there are, and Mr. Lum may be familiar with this as well. I'm sure there's federal money out there. There's foundation money that would be out there for these private employers to have skin in the game. Because again, that's that partnership that we're looking for, that ultimately is not with the state. It's a partnership between them and their employee. Is that, I mean, that's kind of what I envision. And I think that's in line with what the chairman is talking about, is where the jobs are. That we've got to spend whatever money we're spending for people where job opportunities are.
Yeah, let me speak to that just a second to kind of paint a much broader picture. From a department standpoint, all of this is starting to take a proactive approach to transitional housing versus a reactive approach. Any of our providers that are sitting in this room have willingly gotten into the transitional housing game. And what we have traditionally done is we have said, all right, we will help fund that offset cost about $20 a day through our budgetary process and through inmate welfare fund and all those things. And so what we are now doing is moving towards a proactive process, certainly with Ms. McDowell and some of the things that we're doing there, community corrections and our program coordinators. But even this body funding through some ARPA funds, the Accelerate Mississippi grant process that funded what Commissioner Kane spoke to just a second ago. We have 10 what we're calling HOPE coordinators that are around the state that are actually proactively meeting with employers and then finding out what their needs are, so that in those areas we can do that. Because we have other transitional facilities that just aren't participating in the process of working with the state of Mississippi because for one reason or another, they don't want funding and they don't want to be a part of that. So like, for instance, around Ingalls, there is a facility that's either 10 or 15 beds, and I can't recall the name of it. They have never worked with the state of Mississippi, but there are individuals who get out and who for otherwise are lacking funding, may not be incarcerated, but are otherwise, lacking housing that go to that facility. There's another facility that the commissioner and I met with that's in Hancock County, and I can't recall the name of it, but it's those ladies that they have told us they do not want to participate in funding, but they want us to help them put women down because Hancock County has more women in that area at that facility, at that jail. So there are things that we're doing as a department to be proactive in this approach to meet what you guys, what this body wants us to do as part of a lot of these, mechanical issues that we're kind of addressing internally to get to a place where we see it across the state through outreach. And a lot of that's a slow moving wheel, right? To get to that point where we start to see these pop up in places like Laurel or Grenada or Tupelo around Ashley Furniture. So those are things that I think that over the next year, we're going to see that growth happen, or Macomb. I think that we're going to start to see growth happen in areas where we've never seen growth because we're having to be proactive and we're taking a different approach. Whereas in years past, the department has been very reactive to, well, we just need to push people out and give them an address and somebody's willing to take them. So here they are. That's not a great approach. What we need to be doing is working with those who want to be in transitional housing and helping make sure that they have people that are ready to go into those beds and that they're prepared for that. And that we're not just giving them the, whatever comes out the door and putting them in those places, which end up corrupting those transitional houses. We don't want to do that either. So we want to be proactive in the way that we approach this entire process.
And I appreciate that. And you brought up something I think that's very important, and it's data that if y'all have, and I think y'all would, we want to know we have that. Yes, we have 105 beds we're contracted with. And I want to be clear, I'm not being critical. I haven't been in any of those 3 facilities. I'm just saying, along with the chairman, we can't function out of those 3 facilities and expect to serve the needs of the state of Mississippi. But on the other side of it, if you're telling me we have private individuals who are already doing this, that would be good information for us to know, even if it's 15 here, 20 there, because what we wanted to know and what we were told a couple of years ago is that we needed 800 beds. I mean, that's what we were told. Well, that would be a huge funding difference than what we're doing today. But I'm a firm believer that government does not do things better than private industry. And if we have private industry that's out there already doing this, I'm not looking to subsidize. I'm just saying that if there's opportunity with the tight labor market we have, and we have people who are coming out that in the past would really have a hard time getting a job because of the felony mark that they have on their record, is not as big an issue today as it was 20 years ago. So as a legislator, I would want to make sure if there's tax incentives, credits, benefits, that we can go directly to these private industries who are investing in this person for the mutual benefit of the individual and as an employee, the value to that company. I just want to make sure we're putting our dollars where it's best. And there may always be a need for what we call general transitional housing, and people are willing to step into that role. But we're talking about, I'm not talking about transitional housing. I'm talking about transformational housing. And that can only be done through gainful employment. Otherwise, you're just housing me in a less restrictive environment. And so that's, all the things you've mentioned are encouraging, but I want to make sure, a year from now, we're not still having this discussion, that you're telling us how many of these have happened. And I prefer transformational opportunity versus just a transition.
Thank you so much. That's what Mr. McDowell's going to be doing. We're going to find and report back to you. I hope a lot of housing all over the state that's not going to cost us any money will be with these nonprofits and just tie them all together. And that's where our inmate welfare fund money is going, is to pay for school, skills, and trade, because we have to make them employable for high-paying jobs and not minimum wage jobs, because nobody will hire them. But if you're a welder, you get a job. So that's what I want to show y'all at some point. We have some real good video about what all these schools are and what they're doing and so forth that y'all need to be aware of. And we'll be talking about that more as we talk about work release.
I just want to, Senator Norwood, I know you had a question, but I just want to say, I think it's clear to everyone in the room that, and Senator Sparks kind of hit on that as well, is that it has always been a passion of mine to make sure that when individuals are released, then they are released to never come back.
Yeah.
And the only way to make that possible is to make sure, like I said earlier, to make sure that they have everything that they need when they do get out. And that's why legislation that we've been able to get passed in regards to if they are gainfully employed, then the employer make sure that they're drug tested, report their time to their probation officer, and, make it payroll deduct for any supervision fees and things like that they would have to pay, so that they don't have to miss work to go and see a probation officer. The pilot program that we started so that employers can get in the habit of hiring these individuals if they do have a felony record or not, but they do have these skills that they can showcase if individuals are ready to give them a job. And the third thing that I would like to say is that Senator Sparks made the comment about transformational housing. I think I've spoken this many, many times before, but later on, I don't want Mississippi Department of Corrections to just be the Department of Corrections. I want Mississippi Department of Corrections to be that place where people can really get what they really need after, and turn their lives around so that we can make them better. And so that's the whole reason why we're having these hearings. It's because we know that this is something brand new that's probably never been talked about before in regards to MDOC and how we handle MDOC. But we can't continue to increase the funding for MDOC to house individuals, just to house people because they find themselves in prison. We can't continue to do that. And I refuse to continue to throw away state money just to house individuals. And that's for whether it's county jails or MDOC or whatever it is. And I think, and I think the members of my committee feel the same way, is that we just don't want to give you money to say that I can house 5 people here at $20 a day. We want to be able to give you money at $20 or $25 a day to make sure that even beyond MDOC, they're still working with these individuals. There's still work to be done. But to just give $20 a day just to provide a bed is not what I think transitional or transformational housing needs to be. So I just want everyone to be clear of that. It's not just to find somewhere for people to have a bed, because if that's what we're doing, then the only thing we are doing is continue to warehouse individuals. And I don't want us to stay in the same condition that we've been in, is to warehouse individuals. Because when I look back at MDOC and everything that is happening, that has happened, it has always been a warehouse division to me. And we don't want to be in that business of warehousing individuals. So I just want to make sure that that's clear to everyone. Senator Norwood, on your question.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I guess one thing through all of this, my hope is that Jackson and Harris County does not become a dumping ground for individuals that does not have the skill set or the potential of employment, that they are released in Jackson and Harris County. As we know right now, the Department of Correction and Department of Mental Health are the basic major contributors to our homeless population in the city. And I venture to say that many of those individuals were, because they had no other options, the options I should say were limited, so they were released from either of these institutions, and now they find themselves on the streets in a homeless situation with limited resources, and the potential to get them off the street is very, very dim. So I hope in that, I know that New Way Ministries and a couple of other facilities have done an excellent job with the individuals that they have been entrusted with. But yes, there are going to be limited opportunities. And I hope that they would be given some of the same consideration when the individuals are released to their care. And it may even cost more for some of these individuals to be released into areas where there are no jobs. Because it may be more of a challenge to prepare them to become employable. So I hope that those are things, some of the things that would be taken into consideration. And maybe some of the individuals that have been released to the streets, you may want to go back and see if you can get them. And young man I know has a CPA degree that was released to the street. Potentially could have been saved, but opportunity was not there through his rehabilitation process. My final question, well, that was not a question, that was a commentary. But my question would be is regarding the inmate, I understand the inmate welfare fund is one of the contributors to as far as funding. So I'd like to, could you direct me to, or could you share with me the amount of money that's in the inmate welfare fund, and basically how much is there and what the money has been used for up to this, during this current fiscal, not current fiscal year, last fiscal year up to now. I mean, we don't have, you don't have to hold up the hearing for that, but that's just some information that I would like to be provided.
Sure, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Norwood. Is there any other questions? Yes, ma'am. You have a comment?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to add something. In no shape, form, or fashion are we trying to compete with the people who've already been loyal to us through our contracts. Or do we want to make it seem like we're knocking on doors that have already been knocked on? There are a lot of outside companies, but we do understand that we have those who are here in Mississippi who are doing the ministry. I worked in reentry. I was a branch director myself. So there are a lot of hidden gems across the state. This is more so offering the support that they need to expand and also be able to be stable. God's House of Hope in Kilmichael, Mississippi is one of my favorite facilities across the state. A lot of people don't know about them. They offer services that are based with people who have extreme addiction problems. You compete with the county, and then you also compete with those who are formerly incarcerated. There's some other facilities, Dream USA up in the northern region, but those ministries and those facilities also need support from the local community. So what this plan does is essentially help to bloom those seeds that have already been planted in the state of Mississippi and welcome those who also want to plant seed so that maximum capability is headed all across the state of Mississippi. I've worked along Mr. Lum for the past year, and we hosted regional roundups just last year during workforce development. That's when we brought together industry, business owners, those who would be supporting the workforce development opportunities, and we put them in a room together in the North, Central, and Southern region. The employers are already there. The ideas are already there. You have deputy commissioners now who are also working inside and with each other during this process. You have people in the inside during the intake process who are now making sure that you get in these programs, your GED, your vocational programs. And then if you are missed, now you have people who are reaching out on the outside through community corrections like those program coordinators, also like Mr. Lum's staff with MDOC Works, as well as our community partners. So I do feel like we're creating momentum to where in the next year we should see some progress. Before it was component A, component B, component C, and now it's just the alphabet. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G rolling together. So the ideas are there, the plan is there. Myself, I'm a driver. I've been told over the years I get in a lot of trouble by hopping in the driver's seat. So I am passionate myself about reentry, recidivism, making sure those people get what they need, because I have been affected by crimes myself in the past. You have people who are motivated, you have people who are driven, you have people who are hungry to see opportunities for others to expand. So in the past, there have been some hiccups, but I really, really firmly believe in my soul and in my spirit that this is the time now you will see the Department of Corrections shift. I've said at the table myself with our industry partners, Milwaukee Tools, especially in Greenwood. They would love to have opportunities to do some work at Delta Correctional Facility. But you have to get buy-in from the community. If the community says, no, we don't want those returning citizens here, then it's a shutdown. And that's why we're going to go into those communities, host forums, sit down with their mayors, sit down with their leaders. You have to rebrand and change how people see them. Because at the end of the day, they're coming back regardless, but you also have to have their support. So while we talk about transitional housing and seeing it pop up, if we don't have the people on board, we lose it instantly. Even with our larger employers like Ingalls, if we can't get the community buy-in to house, to say, hey, we'll take a chance, then no matter how many jobs we have down there, of course, there's still no housing. So we have to have every single component to make sure that we're completely mapping out a constructive plan, and a plan that's going to allow them to be successful. And I really feel and I really believe now with like our cosmetology school, with our welding, with our CDA components, now is the time that you will see momentum be created throughout this year, and you will see results from the Department of Corrections. So me spearheading myself, I'll take responsibility myself for what I know that you will see based off of me, the staff that's going to be provided, and the team that's going to come together. But everybody at the table playing their key components now, I do believe and I do feel like we will see some results this past year. I mean, this next coming year.
Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your comments. I like what I hear. But I'm going back to what Senator Norwood asked the gentleman about the welfare fund. Do you have any idea how much money in there? He's talking about waiting, but if you ought to know about how much money in there and what the money's being used for.
Yeah, Carrie's gonna comment, but the inmate welfare fund is a fund that's generated by the inmates themselves, buying stuff in the store and the canteen. And so what that money is doing is, we don't want to pull it away from where it is, because it's what's paying for the welding machines, all the stuff we use to start a school. The cosmetology school was paid for from the inmate welfare fund, and that's a lot of money to start that school. And so it's a big, big school, and the whole board was there. So it pays for all the stuff we do, all the tools. We're buying the little tractors that we use to teach people how to have a garden at home. That's part of school. And it buys the stuff to teach people how to lay the pavement that builds a road. So everything we teach somebody is bought by the inmate welfare fund. So it's not a laying out there a bunch of money, and it's smaller than it was because we're using it up to buy all these schools. Once it's all done, then we'll maintain them. But you want school, you want education, you want people hired when they get out of prison so they don't come back. We're doing what y'all want. Y'all just got to come see it and look at it, and we want you to come tour at Parchment and our prisons and see these schools and see where the money is. But that's where the money goes. That's what it is.
Thank you. Senator Wiggins, I think he has a question.
No question.
Senator Wiggins, if you can hear us, unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody, and you in particular mentioning Ingalls. I want you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee to know that after our last meeting, I met with the government affairs for Huntington Ingalls, explained what we were doing, and he said, we stand ready to assist, not only assist, but yes, we want to hire these folks. He did explain that because of the sensitivity of the contracts that they have, and also what is required of them, they have things that they have to look for in employees. I don't know about background checks, but certainly passing drug tests and things like that. So I will say this. So I wanted to offer that and say they're ready, willing, and able to engage in this process. If I heard the testimony correctly, it seemed to be said that they need to reach out to MDOC. Well, I'm here to say that they need to be reached out to, because they're hiring people all the time, and they've got to get these requirements and background done. And so I would hope that to make this happen, that MDOC will reach out to the Ingalls folks. I am happy to be the facilitator of that and get whatever meetings need to be done. But this conversation that I had with Ingalls was probably 3 weeks ago. And they said they happy to, they want to do that, but they just have these requirements that they have to look for in employees.
Fantastic. Thank you, Senator Wiggins, for that.
Thank you.
And we're going to take one more question from the committee. I know I said I wasn't going to rush anyone, but we've been on this one for a little over an hour, I think. And I do want to have everyone, I do want to allow everyone to have their time while we're here today. Senator Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last thing is probably for, well, anybody that wants it, but maybe Ms. McDowell or Bradley, either one. We had issues in the past with proper documentation based on what Senator Wiggins is saying, obviously trying to get people set up for success, certain jobs, somebody's not going to be eligible for, may not have the skill set, et cetera. And that's part, I assume, what your 10 HOPE coordinators are doing. But how are we doing with people who come in without social security numbers, without birth certificates, without the basic documentation that's needed for them to have a job? Because we can train them. They can be a skilled welder, but if they don't have that when they leave, then we're starting them kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit.
Like, I hate to say it, but our person that was really working hard to do that is not with us anymore. And so we have the academy that we started for the folks that are going through presumptive parole. And then we have folks that's obligated to get this done that we're going to hold accountable that they have the 4 things they got to have to get out. And that's just basic. So we're doing that, and it's you're gonna see that. I think that's gonna end, and the number that gets set off because they don't have the driver's license, the social security number, birth certificate, so forth, is going to diminish greatly.
Well, the set off, that's a different conversation for the next.
Okay,
The
but
next
anyway,
folks
they all
I'm
got to
talking
have it.
about. I'm talking about somebody comes in,
Yeah, they got to have their.
you got a
social security
case
number.
file, you know then, or should know, they don't have a birth certificate, they don't have a social security number. Whether they have a 3-year sentence or a 30-year sentence, we know that. We need to know that we're training in vain if we don't get that for them. And, you know, just like the question about the inmate welfare fund, if there was ever something, I think, if there had to be a filing fee or a request fee or something like that, if there was ever a reason for the inmate welfare fund to be used, it would be that inmates would have the proper documentation that they needed, because until you get those first 2 pieces, we can't even give them the provisional driver's license that they're also supposed to be getting. So that answer is a little concerning. That's supposed to be rudimentary. We've been talking about that for 4 years, with people getting the proper documentation. So
I think, Senator, I'd love to give you the number, but I think that most people do now. We do not have that problem as much anymore at all, but it's the very few. And it's being the ones that are responsible for it is when they intake, when they come in the gate, they're doing it now at that point. And so we are not going to be sending people out to jobs with no social security number. They can't get the job. So that's part of it. We're going to have that done, and it's pretty well done. I don't think you're going to see that problem much more.
thank you.
Thank you all from MDOC that's coming to present to us today, and we appreciate that. And hopefully we'll be able to continue this momentum that we have and make sure that going forward is that we can have a good action plan to make sure that we accomplish exactly what we'll set out to do. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Next. All right, next we have Ms. T. Conley with Sober Living Housing and Recovery.
Good morning.
Good morning. Ms. T, if you don't mind, there's a button on your microphone. If you push it till it's green,
Can you hear me now? Okay, awesome. I do have some flyers just to pass to the senators. So, how are you guys doing? Good. My name is Tiara Connerly. I'm owner of Sober Living Residential. As you're aware, I am a transitional housing provider. We're located in Meridian, Mississippi, and currently contracted with MDOC for 34 beds to help with the transition of returning citizens. Prior to our contract with MDOC, we focused on providing a safe environment for recovering addicts to thrive and remain drug-free after completing a 30-day inpatient program. The services we provide go far beyond just housing residents and is a very complex process. I'm a dual certified medical psychiatric nurse practitioner, which has tremendously benefited the program overall. I also established a healthcare on the go medical clinic that provides the needed medical, psychiatric, and substance abuse treatment to the residents. The housing portion is just 20% of the big picture is what is required and provided to be a successful program. To name some of the services that we render, when the residents come, we give a free medical, psychiatric, and psychosocial evaluation. It's myself, I do the medical, and then we also have another psychiatric nurse practitioner, or myself, I do the psych as well. And we do that upon admission and then also ongoing throughout the program. We provide food, clothing, toiletry, medications. We have a lot of residents that get out and they have chronic medical problems, high blood pressure, diabetes. They don't have any medication or they haven't been taking any. And so we have to provide that. Also, we have a lot of residents that come out that is has psychiatric issues, unknown and known. And we have to provide a lot of the medications for that as well. We help the residents to obtain their IDs, social security cards, birth certificates to prepare them for employment. So the first 30 days, that's what we work on. Usually after 30 days is when they can get a pass to go home, because the first 30 days we're having to focus on getting the identifications before they even go to any job. We provide job skill placement. We have partnered with several of the steel mills, lawn service, contractors, construction, and we have some of the staffing agencies that once our residents get their identification, we can call them and let them know that we have however many X amount of residents is ready to go to work. We've even taken it a step further to where on some of the jobs, we ensure that they have a clean drug screen or we reimburse them for their drug screen if they fail. We also provide weekly drug screening. We do weekly staffing to track the resident progress throughout the program. And through Healthcare on the Go, we also provide drug and alcohol treatment. We provide transportation to and from the AA, NA meetings 5 days a week. And then myself and another certified substance abuse counselor, we have 2 mandatory meetings on Tuesdays and Fridays. We also provide transportation to their job for the first 2 weeks or at least until they're able to get their first check a lot of them carpool each other because they're working the same shifts. We provide a scholarship to the residents per every 4 to 5 week class, offering a certified nursing assistant certificate or phlebotomy certificate. And we just recently added that on in the last 6 months through Healthcare on the Go. So also, another thing that we do, once the residents are at a place to where they're working and stable, we have another component to where it's more longer term housing. You guys are the Senate Correction Committee, and I'm sure you're aware of the barriers that the residents face when they're released from prison. As a transition provider, my goal has been not to only provide a safe shelter, but to work on the root cause of the problem that's the reality of the things that result in recidivism: mental, drug addiction, and behavioral changes. And of course, this is my first time attending one of these hearings, so seeing it from the political side is totally different. And I hear a lot about employment, but again, a lot of them need IDs, Social Security, birth certificate, all of those things in place first. And just from being a provider for last 4 or 5 years, I've seen it to where when they get out, it is so many other things that have to be in place before they go on a job. I can safely say that 85–90% of the residents that's released are already using drugs. And a lot of times, if we put them right into a job, they're not used to working. They're gonna just have money to continue to buy drugs and use drugs. And so there are so many different processes that we do throughout our program. Of course, the biggest barrier as a provider is finances. We've never received any grant funding or investors. I took my personal money to get it started, and unfortunately, still taking personal money to continue to sustain it, because I realized early on that it takes more than just housing, providing a bed. There are so many more things that we're having to do that cost. When I first started this, I started it just out of passion, because I know there are great people that make poor choices and end up in prison, including my mom. She served 18 months in prison, and when she was released, for so many years, I saw her help a lot of individuals after the fact. And so it started as a passion. And again, that's one of the reasons why I took a lot of my personal money.
Ms. Conley, may I interrupt you?
Yes.
Please? I just want to say thank you for coming. In your brief time at the podium, you said a whole lot. And thank you for that. Thank you for your passion. And just like you, your mom was formerly incarcerated, and unfortunately, my dad was murdered. But I still believe, like you do, that there are some good people that made some bad decisions that do need a second chance. And I'm glad to hear you answer Senator Sparks' question in regards to IDs, birth certificate, Social Security cards. That's not being able, that where these individuals are being released and don't have that kind of, those documents with them when they are released. And I do know that that's a burden on you and any other person that opens up a transitional house. And I just do know that $20 or whatever that we're giving is not enough to cover all of that. And for you all to be able to operate any. So I guess my question is to you, and again, please apologize me for interrupting. But I do have a question, and that question is, does MDOC reach out to you when the individual is released to you? Is there any communications when they are released to you? And the other question is, are you aware that these individuals do not have Social Security card, a birth certificate, and these type of things when they are released? And the reason I'm asking these questions is because the less of that you have to do that should have already happened prior to these individuals being released. I think if you didn't have to do all of that, I think that the services that you all provide could probably be a whole lot better if you didn't have to do the work that the state of Mississippi should have already done before. And just like you said, those individuals who are released, I know some of them have to come back. And those individuals who are released that still have significant drug issues when they're released. If you all didn't have to take care of all of that, I'm sure that that money is probably would still be an issue, but it wouldn't be a greater issue if some of these things was addressed. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes, sir. It would definitely help, when it comes financially. And now I can say, in the last year, we have been getting residents from some of the programs that Mr. Burrow Kane was discussing that's inside the prisons, where we notice a big difference because we are getting some of those that's actually ready to go to work. And that's one of the populations that's coming into the program that have their IDs and haven't been using drugs. And I'm also noticing that they are some of the ones that are more successful. Just thinking of some of the residents that we have now that recently have been here in the last couple of months. But yes, to answer your question, it will help if it was already taken care of. Because when they come out, if they don't have family support, we're eating that cost. And I'm gonna say the partnership with MDOC has been a blessing to a lot of the residents that's coming into our program. Now, I do know that they have people in place that responsible for that. And I guess with me, I like quicker results. And so we sometimes, like, for instance, if they come, they've already applied for it. It's just that they don't have it when they get there. And so a lot of times we have to just go ahead and redo it because we don't have time to try to track it down.
Okay. And the other component that you talked about as far as trying to find them work and employment and those type of things, how you are handling it when, if they leave your place or they have to stay there longer, or you are requiring those people, once they find employment, to start kind of paying their own way?
Are you meaning like after the 6 months?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so a lot of them that's working, again, we have another component that we first started out with just where we have recovering addicts that they're there in the program to remain sober and in a safe environment. And so a lot of them will switch over. And then we've also had instances where it's taken a little longer for this person to be successful and ready. And so at that point, they reach out to their PO officers and get permission to go through the program maybe another month or so to get themselves together.
Okay. And also, are you aware of the legislation that was passed in regards to employment? Is that if the employer agrees to drug test them, to send in their time reports and those type of things to MDOC, is that they do not have to necessarily report like they would normally to their probation officers. Do you all explain that to employers as well and let those people who are there know that so that they can help them keep employment and to help you all as far as transportation, getting them to and from the job, or may have to take them to and from the probation officer? Has all that been made available to you all?
No, and again, I think a lot of the ones that we use for employment are just ones years ago that we, connected with. And so, no, I wasn't aware of that.
Thank you. And you're welcome to continue. I'm sorry, but you just, I mean, it was just good to hear what you had to say.
Yes, sir, thank you. And let me see where I was at, I'm sorry. Again, I was saying that one of the biggest barriers to transition providers is finances, especially if, I'm gonna speak for my program. With all the other aspects that we have to look at other than just a bed, it's a big barrier. I have personally become employed at every mental health hospital in Meridian, Mississippi, to have easier access to treatment and to make it happen. So of course, that means working 2 full-time jobs and 3 contract jobs for the past 7 years. Again, we're paid $20 per day for each resident, only if the bed is occupied. And, unfortunately, it's just not enough to do everything that is needed. We're currently, working with 5 staff members, but what we do would easily take 10 plus. So it has taken a lot of charitable hours to make it happen. Again, our partnership with MDOC has been a blessing to a lot of the returning citizens. And, I hope that our work as a transitional housing provider does not go unnoticed because we are touching a lot of lives. It gives us great pleasure to see the residents that come out and actually get a job and buy cars and reconnect with their families. And that's what's keeping us going. It's definitely not the amount of money that's coming out of the business at all. And again, I invite you guys to come and see what's done. We was established in 2018, and I don't think the light has been shed on everything that we're doing right there in Meridian, Mississippi. And the people that has come through our program that's now managers, supervisors at some of these steel mills that have their own place. And, again, working with MDOC, it's been a good process, but I also think that more communications, more connecting to make all of it happen. It will definitely help. And again, one of the biggest things is just $20 is not enough. We can harp on they need a job, but again, it is so much more that I see, just being a medical psychiatric provider. It's so much more. I know there are a lot of state fundings with different places that provide free health care, but honestly, we only have one free clinic because if they go to anywhere else for the state funded, they have to pay $40. They don't have that when they first get out. So it's just a lot of barriers that, a lot of barriers. Thank you so much for your time. Any questions, suggestions?
Thank you, Ms. Conley. Any members of the committee have any questions for Ms. Conway? Senator Sparks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Conley, and I've got probably several rapid fire questions because the presentation you gave was very helpful to kind of bridge this gap between what we're seeing when someone exits MDOC to what happens next. So I don't know, so that's why I'm asking these questions. In your experience, does someone come to you directly from the MDOC facility? In other words, are you night one stay when someone's released from MDOC?
Yes,
Okay. Are the majority of your participants from the Meridian facility?
no, they come from all over.
Does MDOC contact you about the availability of beds?
Yes, the caseworkers stay in contact with us.
And do I understand that your facility, you talked about you had 34 beds. Is this a mixture of people who are in a sober living environment, treatment, et cetera, and MDOC formerly incarcerated people, or is everyone in your facility formerly incarcerated?
No, we have some that has never been to prison, but unfortunately, just the correlation between drug addiction and prison, a lot of times it goes hand in hand.
I don't understand. it sounded like you described that you also offer treatment, not treatment services, but sober living environment for people that have never been incarcerated. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So that when we first started, that was our main focus.
Is that still a part of your program today?
Yes.
What are the total number of beds you have available in your facility at?
So, yes, sir. So the total number, our number today with MDOC residents and our other program, we're at 56 beds total.
34 of those are potentially contracted out.
That's correct.
And do you charge a fee? I noticed talk about things that are included with the fee on your flyer. Do you charge a fee to the residents? And if so, what is that amount?
For MDOC or
Well, it would be MDOC, I guess would be my question. Yes.
Okay, so we have two portions, okay? The ones is there for just the regular sober living program for drug, alcohol. They have a monthly fee that they pay.
Correct.
And then for MDOC, we get what the state pays us, which is $20 a day. Once the resident is working 4 or 5 months, we get $50 incidental fee. And what we do with that $50 is, number one, we do it for several reasons, because we want them to get used to paying rent on time. And then that will be the fee that they will be paying to their PO officer if they was not in our program.
Well, they still have to pay their PO whether they're with you or not, correct?
Well, no, because when we first started, we were told that their fees were waived while they were in the program.
Okay.
And so again, once they're established, 3-4 months of employment, what we do with those $50 is we just put it back into the program. So if we have barbecues, we go bowling, we use that for fun purposes.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to figure out where the money goes. I just wanted to know, is that $50 a month?
$50 a month, that's correct.
And that's after they've been working. I want to go back to a couple of the things that you said when they come to you. You're telling me that people are coming to you day one, roughly leaving MDOC custody, and you've been working on them 3 or 4 years. Is that correct? You've been working with MDOC. You've had this up and running since 2018.
Correct.
All right. How long have you been working with MDOC?
I think we got the contract in 2019.
Okay, so 4 years roughly. What has been your experience that people came in with social security numbers, birth certificates, things, documentation, ready to go to work, percentage wise? And I'll take a guess. I'm not asking you to be exactly correct, but is it 50-50? Is it less than 50?
I would say less than 50. And again, I just think it's, if there's a staff member available that's on it, it's better.
I'm not talking about your staff. I'm talking about they walk into you, they don't have social security number, birth certificate.
That's what I said. I would say probably less than 50. But I noticed that if there's a staff member with MDOC that we can contact and stuff, that it's better. But then sometimes we don't have anyone to contact so I would say less than 50.
And is that percentage been consistent across those 4 years? Or are you seeing it being better now than it was 4 years ago?
It fluctuates.
You mentioned, and you have a skill set, training, et cetera, but are you saying that some people are coming to you and they couldn't pass a drug test when they walked in your building?
That's correct.
What percentage generally do you find that have a drug or alcohol issue? Now, alcohol, kind of separate part, a drug issue, and I don't mean they're a drug addict, I mean they're a drug user, and they would test hot when they come to you.
If I had to just say a percentage, I would say 75% of the residents that come to us, they come selling a drug screen. And so with those, again, and we have it to where they come negative and 3 weeks later they're using again. And so then when we question, a lot of them, they've been using the entire time or off and on while they're incarcerated.
Okay, and I'm assuming you drug test everybody when they come in, and
Oh, yes,
you would
sir.
have data that.
Yes, we drug test everyone, and when they come, if they go on a pass, we drug test them. We drug test pretty much weekly. And again, it's just it's a complex process,
Well, I understand, and what I think I'm trying to determine is not what you do with them once you get them. I want to know what state they're in when you get them, because we've just listened to MDOC testify, and these two things aren't adding up. And I'm not trying to put you in a tough spot, but you're here trying to tell us what the real issues are, and that's what we want to know. Is if they come to you without documentation, and they come to you and don't pass a drug screen, and they come to you directly from the Department of Corrections, then that's not good. I don't know how else to say that. And as the chairman said, it puts you in a position that you have to do work you shouldn't be doing, that you could be focused on something else. Do you know who your HOPE coordinator is for the Meridian District?
I'm sorry.
Do you know who your HOPE coordinator is for the Meridian area? Do you know what a HOPE coordinator is?
No, I don't, but I also have, Ms. Vala Green is here with me that does a lot of the upfront stuff too.
I just think before you leave, Mr. Lum needs to let you know what a HOPE coordinator is. Because apparently there's 10 of them across the state. And I would say they should be working with one of our facilities that's housing a third of the people we contract out with. I don't mean to be difficult, but I've been doing this for 4 years now. And we've got people who come in here like you who are trying to offer services. And I'm sitting over here with my accountant hat on saying, well, what do we need to be doing? And what are you collecting on a fee? I'm worried about the state tax dollars. But if people are coming to you without documentation and addicted to drugs, we ain't even got to the accountant hat. So, I probably would like to follow up with some data. I ask that you continue to keep data about how you receive people, the condition, drug testing, paperwork, because we've got to do a better job coming out the door if that's what you're experiencing. I think that's all I've got. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Norwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the work that you do. The $20, the $20, and looking at this, I mean, I'm certainly, documented that $20 is not, you're not doing it for the money, I guess.
No,
And,
no, sir.
And I think it's some work that I guess we have to do, Mr. Chairman, because you get to $20 only if the bed is occupied, right?
That's correct.
So if MDOC fails to send you anyone, just say you have five beds that are occupied, you still have to, your costs, operation cost is not reduced. You still have lights, you still have all of those, the essentials, and you still have your professional staff that's there that even if it's one person that they have to, you have to continue to provide those services for that one individual, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So in essence, well, Mr. Chairman, I think that's something that we really need to look at, because we're asking you to really perform a monumental task. Just like it is with the school system. We have with the school system, whereas that if it's one child there or two children there, you still, the cost is not going to be reduced. It's still going to cost. So it's something I think we need to look at. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Senator Norwood, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, and that's why I asked the question earlier. You know, we giving you $20, but again, we're asking you to do a whole lot with it. And I understand what you're saying, and again, thank you for coming. And yes, Senator Norwood, again, I am aware of that. That's something that, and that's the reason why we're having these series of meetings, so that when we do put something together, then we can make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do to help those who are trying to help others as well. Senator Butler, you had a question?
Just more of clarification. First, thank you for what you do. Senator Spark asked you about the people that come into your facility, what percentage come there maybe that test positive for drugs. Now, and I just want to make sure I heard you correct. Now, the ones that coming from MDOT are not being, that's not the 70% that you said that are coming there positive.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You said, I'm saying that that's not the 70%?
No. And again, Senator Sparks, I heard him ask the question. You know, I know you got two things going on at your facility, but my concern, of course, is the one that's coming from MDOT. Department of Corrections. All right, so the ones that are coming from the Department of Corrections, what percentage of them are coming there positive?
Yeah, so it would be that 70% because our other clients, they come from treatment centers. Some come from 30-day programs. We get some that come directly from detox, so they know that they cannot be admitted if their test is positive. And again, their situation is different because they're there for drugs, to stay clean, to remain sober. And so they don't get the same rules per se that we have for our MDOC clients. because we understand if they're coming from an environment where they've been using drugs, our other clients, as soon as they test positive, they have to go back to treatment, but we can't do that with our MDOC residents because of insurance. And like I said, I'm affiliated with Wings Alliance and East Mississippi. So I'm able to get them treatment, but the problem is if they have to go to treatment, they worry whether they will have a bed or not. Because the funds are only if the bed is occupied. And so some of them, if they need 30-day treatment right up front, then they may not have a bed when they come back. So they're hesitant. They don't want to go for treatment because they don't have another address to go to. So.
Well, again, I just think that's kind of high coming from him. You know what I mean? That's kind of high. Thank you.
Ms. Conley, when y'all do your drug testing, is this do y'all have like is it for cocaine? Is it marijuana? Is it, I mean, what all drugs do you all test for?
Yes, sir, we do. I think I think ours is a 10 or 12 panel. And then if we're unsure, we're also contracted with a lab company that will run it for us as well. But yes, it's a 10 or 12 panel. And then we also test for alcohol as well.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the question would probably be for MDOC, not for her regarding do they test individuals? I mean, I don't know if the other providers test the individual before they take them in, but I guess what is the pattern there? Do they test them before they obviously something the other? That's some more questions that need to be asked, not of her.
I think that's the sentiment around everyone that's sitting at this table here now, is that yes. And we will make sure that we get some answers for this, because it's a problem. Is there anyone else that has any questions for Ms. Conley? Ms. Conley, again, we appreciate it. Appreciate you coming, and we appreciate what you're doing. And I'm glad that you understand that it's more than just a bed. That you are doing these things, the job placement, and those kind of things, and giving them some responsibility, even if that responsibility is just paying you $50 a month after they have been employed. I think that's something that they need to understand, is that, whether you live in here or somewhere else, then you have that responsibility that you have to pay somewhere to live, and we've given you that opportunity. So I appreciate that, and I will make it my personal duty to come and see your place, not to come and criticize, or not to come, but what you have talked about today. I want to come and visit that, because I think that what you're doing, like I said, is totally in line of what I would like to see, not just in the Meridian area, but wherever we release our individuals to. I would like for that to be their mission as well, is to make sure that we put sober, drug-free people able to go to work and those type of things back into our communities. And I think that's what helps when we go into it, talking to our community leaders, is that we're giving you people that we truly feel like deserve this second chance. And here's why: because of the things that we have done. I think that helps everything. So again, thank you so much for coming, sharing what you do with us. Is there anything you'd like to close with?
No, like I said, it's been the process has been a blessing, even with all the hiccups. It's been good.
Well, again, thank you for coming. If you all don't mind, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess. Someone may want coffee, somebody may want water. What did he say? All right, we're gonna call this meeting back to order. And I think we have Ms. Vicky DeMoney with us from Crossroads Transitional Housing. Ms. Vicky, if you are here, okay, we're gonna ask you to take the podium, please.
It is just one and, yeah, be good. Good morning. This is my very first time, so I'm a little nervous, so. So my name is Vicky DeMoney. I founded Crossroads Ministry in 2007. I became a vendor for MDOC in 2015. Crossroads is a faith-based ministry dedicated to providing excellent care for women coming from incarceration. I got my start in this program by serving as a clergy on the inside of CMCF for about 5 years. I personally got to know so many of the ladies and just knew that was my heart. My mission field was to help these women. And the one thing that I just kept hearing over and over and over and over again is that I don't have anywhere to go. I've made parole, but I don't have anywhere to go. Where I do have to go, if I go there, I'm going to come right back here. And I heard that enough until finally God spoke to my heart and I started a home. I started off with 4 ladies. I was hoping I couldn't mess them up too bad. And I just grew from there. I didn't draw a paycheck. I invested my own money for the first 7 years. The MDOC contract provided me a jump start in bigger, more. And I was able at that point to open up my aftercare home. So just to back up and tell you a little bit about who we have become. When the girls come to me, they come with a white mesh sack with books, some papers, and some paperwork if needed. I start with a toothbrush. I start putting their life back together. I start with clothes, shoes, hygiene products, a purse with a billfold with hopefully documentation at some point. We begin our intake process to assess medical needs. There's a large populations of people coming out of prison that have very concerning medical needs. I've had in the last year, a girl come out with a melanoma on her eye that we had to help get financial aid to get her in to get that taken care of. A lesion under another lady's tongue that turned out to be cancer that she had to have corrective surgery done. There are a lot of medical health needs for the ladies coming out. I'm not sure how it is to work with men, but women need mammograms. Women need female checkups. They need to get their medicine in the right way. And that takes getting them into the doctor. We assess their documentation as their needs, their legal issues, and every other concern they have. When they come to Crossroads, they are assigned a mentor, a counselor, and they have 2 therapy groups. They attend classes on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Everything we do is to focus on their needs, not just for the moment, but for their future. We work towards family reunification and other avenues for housing. This year, for the first time, I've been able to get a grant from HUD, from Mississippi Home Corp, with rapid rehousing that I've been able to put in place to find ladies a home. We have been able to open our doors for 4 of our ladies in our independent living homes that have regained custody of their children. I have a 16-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 9-month-old, and a 2-year-old living with their moms in their private bedrooms. That's a big thing for me to be able to say today. We have been able to partner with Holmes Community College that is coming in our campus to teach Smart Start, GED, and help with scholarships for a few of our ladies to go back to school. Just recently, one of our ladies got her welding degree. She got a scholarship to do that. Holmes is currently trying to help me provide more scholarships for women who would like to go back to school. I have been able over the last 16 years to build a large volunteer base. I have 16 partner churches, a couple of foundations, and some grants. Because to be honest with you, if I had to depend on the $20 a day that I've got from MDOC, I would have starved to death. There's just no way to do an effective program on that. But I realize that I shouldn't totally depend on MDOC. I have to research, get out there, and be an ambassador for these women. Get them in the churches, in the communities, so that they can have jobs, so that people can get to know them and see who they are. They're good women. They made a bad choice, but they're good women looking to restart their life, and I fight for them every day. I am short-staffed, but I do have 4 people on staff, which is exciting. I have issues with providing good medical care. It's difficult to get driver's license due to the large fines some have. The 6 months provisional license helps, but it's not an answer. I've got a girl that's got $5,000 worth of fines, working for $10 an hour. Her provisional's up, and how is she gonna tackle that? It's difficult. Sometimes the provisional license is good. They only have like a few $100s worth of fines and they can get that paid. But so many of them, their fines are so big, it's almost impossible to tackle. I've heard the term warehouse, and that breaks my heart because I know for myself and for other people that are here, that is not what I do. I provide a home, a family. I want them to learn to live as a family again. I want them to know they're loved, not just by me, but by our community, our churches, and by MDOC. We have to support these people or they're not going to make it. Most of the women that come to me are addicts. 98% are incarcerated because of their addiction. Prison does not help addiction. It does not break off the addiction. About 50% of people that come to me have used in prison and or no documentation. I have that noted in my files and I can give you an exact number. If you want, I can email that back to you because I keep up with it. They're drug tested when they come in and we gather all that we can when they first come in to determine what we need to do for our ladies. I don't believe that they need to go right back to work. I believe they need time to sit down, gather their thoughts, get assistance in becoming not institutionalized. What's a good example of being institutionalized? Here's one that I use. If I wake up in the morning and my tennis shoes are not up under my bed, my first thought is, where did I leave my tennis shoes? Their first thought is, who stole my tennis shoes? There are so many wrong thinkings that have developed while they've been incarcerated that they don't even know how to think anymore, how to motivate themselves. I find that most women coming out of incarceration have very low motivational skills because their choices have been taken away from them. On an average, we make 300-400 decisions a day. A person incarcerated makes anywhere from 25 to 50 choices. So it's just getting them to breathe again, to live again, to think for themselves again in a way that is healthy. We spend about 3 months doing that, and then we begin to move them into my aftercare program. When they do get their phones, and we do help them find a job, and we do provide transportation. I currently have 4 homes, 37 beds available. I do not stop our program at 6 months. We continue on with Our Ladies for as long as they need us. Somehow, some way, God has always provided that for me. I have a girl that's living in one of my independent living houses that had been with me for 3.5 years. I have never put anybody on the streets unless they're doing something they shouldn't. I stay with them until I can see they can make it. This past year, I rented 2 houses and we made independent living houses. Each girl lives in a house, has their own bedroom, and they share common areas, and they share the rent, they share the utilities. I get the lease, I put down the utility deposit, and the landlord that I'm working with has been very kind to let me determine who lives in the house, and it has worked out beautiful. I have 11 of those beds. I have 9 in my aftercare, where they continue under MDOC provisions that they don't have to pay rent until after 6 months. They do, however, pay a $20 a week transportation fee and a $10 household need fee. I want you guys to know that what I do at Crossroads, I do from my whole heart. I'm not an institution. I provide a loving home for these ladies to come to. My goal is to set each woman under my care for success and that they never go back to prison and to find freedom from their addiction. We work really hard on that. I have several recovery classes. We're connected with AA and Celebrate Recovery. I try really hard to get them tools that they can use so that when they leave my facility, they have tools in place. They know where to go, who to call to get help, because it's the community that has to surround them to give them that support. And people need to quit being afraid of people who have been incarcerated. I've been able to make a wonderful partnership with an organization called Moosey that bakes bath bombs, and they hire all my girls, just about. I have connections with Wendy's. I've got a lady right now works there. She'd been incarcerated 18 years. She came to me, did her 3 months program, got a job. She is now the assistant manager at Wendy's, making $16 an hour. I helped her get her first home with Rapid Housing. She has her own car. She did not want to go back to the coast where she is from because she knew she didn't need to be around the same people, places, and things. So when I heard you kind of say that people need to go back to the area they're from, sometimes that's true and sometimes that's not true. Sometimes that's the last place they need to go. Most of the ladies that come to my house are not from Madison. They're from all over the state, and they're quick to tell me, I don't need to go back to the coast. I don't need to go back up to North Mississippi. I need to make me a new life right here. And so that's about everything from my program, because I echo everything that's been said so far. And I've given you a lot of paperwork that you can look over that details who I am. So questions?
Thank you, Ms. Vicky, for coming, and thank you for what you do for those ladies, and thank you for extending your time with them. I mean, I think that's important too. And I'm glad to hear you say that most of the women that come to you are not just from the Jackson area, but they may be from the coast and don't want to go back. And I think the point that I was trying to make earlier is that, and I'm glad you helped clarify that, is that yes, it's true that everyone doesn't need to go back to where they came from. But there could be some individuals that may be released to the Jackson area that may not need to be in Jackson, or may not want to be in Jackson, but may want to relocate to the coast for them. And so that's my whole point, is to make sure that we do have places that are in place to help people when they are released, to, so that they don't have to go back to doing what they was doing. And again, I hear you along with others say, that it's not all about the money, but at the end of the day, we do realize at the state that we have to do something.
Right.
To make sure that we can keep doors at places like you have open, so that we can provide all the help that we can possibly give these individuals when they are released. Make sure that they don't come back. And so,
Yep.
I thank you for for what you're doing, and thank you for coming and talking to this committee and sharing, you know, what you do with us, because it is important and it does help us when we do start to sit down and try and find some right to all of this that's going.
Yes, sir. It's hard for me, I think about this all the time because we have an expectation for people coming from incarceration. to Get out, collect all that they need, get an ID, get a job, buy a car, and find a home as a felon. As a felon, their jobs have been cut down to about 70% of 30% of availability. I've been on a campaign in Madison County for years now to address some of the apartments that won't allow felons to live there. That's got to change. It's the mindset of our community that has to change for us to work hard. We have Nissan around me, Amazon, Levi, wealth of people that can give people jobs. And they need them. I mean, they need people. Wendy's is paying $12 an hour. That's how much they need people. But our ladies don't have a way to get back and forth to work. They have to stay with somebody like me, or they can't go to work. So it's providing a safe environment. It's providing a place that they can feel safe, that they can feel protected. And that's where I see a value of a transitional program. It is just that. It is going from this place to this place to this era to this new place, and everything they do is a little scary. Then they find confidence. We go to like 15 churches every Sunday, different churches, different religions, because I want them to know they can walk in any place and hold their head up high and be proud of who they are and be comfortable in being part of the world again. They work in our thrift store. That's how I get a lot of donations to clothe them, for shoes, for purses, for jewelry, for hygiene products. All that has to be collected. And it doesn't cost them anything. I've never charged anybody anything until after the 6 months. And if MDOC could see their way or funding to extend that 6 months, that would be helpful. Because if they're with me and they have to start paying rent, if I could extend that, that's $300 a month, and then they could keep saving. And that's what the rapid housing was great for me this year, because I was able to do that. I was able to provide 6 more months of free rent so that they could continue to save money. And that's what we have to do.
Thank you again for that. Any questions by any of my committee members? Two of you here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 6 months you've mentioned, is that the contractual period of time that MDOC will pay once they enter with you?
Yes, and I'd like to mention that because that is something that is such a value to me from MDOC, is that my ladies are required to stay 4 months when they come to me. That's the contract they make with me, and their parole officer holds them accountable. I require 4 months.
But 6 months is all MDOC will pay is.
But 6 months is all they're gonna pay.
Let me ask you about the process of how you would have someone come to your facility.
Mhm.
MDOC, I'm assuming, reaches out to you and says, here's 5 people that we potentially would fit in your circumstance. Do you just have to take them, or is there a process you go through?
It's a process I go through. I get, now I want to clarify one thing about my program. It is solely committed to women coming out. of
Yes, yeah, I
incarceration.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should have couched my question. I understand you're only women.
So I get applications in the mail from the ladies themselves. I get families that go on my website and get applications, and then case managers contact me. I then in turn, as best I can, go into the prison and interview the ladies. And I tell them when I sit down, I'm really not here to interview you. I'm here for you to interview me, because I want you to know where you're coming, what my expectations are, and is this what you want? If this is what you want, then I want to have you come here and let me help you. The only restrictions I really have is I can't take sex offenders because of the restrictions that I'm placed under. Sometimes medication can be an issue if it's medication that I cannot get. Other than that, it's all about what the women express to me they want.
But between the two of you, you have to match, if you will, to agree to come to your place.
Yeah, because I don't want somebody coming expecting to go right to work because that's not what we do. And if that's important to them, then they need to find an area that's what they provide.
And then I assume you have authority to remove someone if they violate your terms of agreement.
Yes, I have. I have a wonderful officer at the Canton office, Kadisha Clark, who works with me. And that's another thing I think I do is I work with MDOC. I want to partner with them. They know, the Canton office knows that I'm taking care of my ladies. If my ladies aren't doing what they're supposed to do, they're going to get a phone call. And I also try to educate to my ladies as to how their relationship needs to work with MDOC and the parole office, because a lot of them don't understand if they don't report, they going back to jail.
Right.
You know, they don't have a clear understanding. I just took a sweet lady, she'd served 16 years in prison. She'd been out 4 years. And she ended up back in, violated. She didn't have a home. She didn't know they were going to put her back in jail if she didn't report. And God just spoke to me and said, help that girl. She's a 52-year-old lady full of joy. And I've taken her in and I'm educating her. You cannot do this. I tell them all the time, if you want to go back to prison, leave this place and don't report. So I think there's an education there with the people coming out of incarceration that they need to understand their obligations under their parole.
And I understand that because when you're sitting there and the judge sentences you, you know, you're yes, your honor, no, your honor, yes, your
Yeah,
honor, no, your honor.
they hadn't heard anything.
And, yeah, we don't follow up well to make sure they understand that. Then as far as a couple of quick things, the medical issues, you give some type of medical evaluation or have that done when someone comes to you. Do you help them seek to get on Medicaid if they qualify?
Well, not many people qualify for Medicaid. Unless you're on disability, you don't get Medicaid. What I do, or you're pregnant, and hopefully I've had a couple that came to me that way, but
Well, from an income standpoint.
not even income, you don't qualify for Medicaid.
Um,
Just recently, when somebody changed the laws, could my girls get food stamps? Because used to you couldn't get food stamps if you had a drug charge.
Okay.
That's just been recently.
The education side, do a lot of people come to you that do not have, you mentioned GED, I understand that, but do you have a lot of people that come to you that do not have high school equivalency?
Mhm.
And have these people been incarcerated for lengthy periods of time and they still don't have high school equivalency?
Most of the people that don't have a GED are the people that have served short times in prison. You know, long-term people, I think MDOC does a fairly good job about getting them in the GED program.
Right. And then one thing, it's not really a question, it might be a comment to help with the provisional license. And you may be aware of this, but when someone gets out and they have fines, often they'll have it in multiple courts.
Mhm.
If it's failure to pay,
Mhm.
FTP, they're not supposed to suspend the driver's license. If it's failure to appear, now unfortunately, people that have had addiction problems, they just don't go to court is often a problem. So if you can delineate between which ones are FTAs and which one are FTPs, it might help them in that 6-month period if they can focus most of their money on the FTAs. That might help keep them with continuity of being able to travel.
Yeah, we do contact the county where their fines are at. Sometimes we get help, sometimes we don't.
I understand.
And every case is different. I haven't figured out in 16 years how to cookie cut any of this. It's all different. I went to court with a girl that had ran and been in prison, and she had a non-adjudicated, she didn't appear for. she had served in the Army for 8 years. She had PTSD really bad, so when she got out, she got on drugs. When I got her out of prison, I just slowly began to help her piece her life back together. And I went to court with her. And I sat there and I thought, she's going back to jail. And that judge heard her, he listened to me, he found her guilty, he found her, and then he suspended it
Right.
and
And-
told me to take her home. So
and
sometimes it is that.
Yeah, we have a variation of, and then that's something that, you know, the federal system has sentencing guidelines, the state,
Mhm.
there's a wide range. But just particularly misdemeanor fines to have their driver's license suspended, because most time it is driving without a driver's license, no
Right.
insurance, et cetera. If those are, there's a difference between a failure to appear and a failure to pay, and that might help them just a little.
And a
If-
lot of times it's complicated because it's from another state. You know, you're up in Virginia and it's just, if it's local, I usually can do something to help. But when you start talking about out of state things, even with birth certificates, that can be the challenge.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any other questions? Many members of the committee? Councilor Norwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did understand you to say you do drug testing,
Mhm.
and you will get that.
Yes, we
Okay.
drug test when they come, and then we do random drug tests as needed.
Okay. Now, the different facilities that you have in the brochure, that's more or less, that's different stages of their, are they,
Mhm.
of their stay with you?
Right, the first house is the first 90 to 120 days of classes and just treatment, recovery from addiction, from trauma. I'm really trying to focus a lot on trauma in women. Most all my women have been subject of abuse, bad home life, bad husbands, things they've done to themselves, guilt, shame. A lot of them don't have any teeth in their head. It's hard to go on a job interview if you don't feel good about yourself. And then, like I said, just sitting down and gathering themselves and being prepared to go out into the world and get a job. So after they finish there, you see my aftercare home. That's when I started in 2015. That's when I really get them to work. I have not had one lady in the last few years come to me needing a job, needing help, that we haven't been able to provide them all of their needs. Everybody in my other 3 houses are currently working and working toward their goals of getting their own place. And I hope to rent more houses if possible, because as a woman making $10, $12 an hour, the cost of living today, you're not getting anywhere under $800 a month, you know, and then trying to buy a car and car insurance and stuff. So these 2 houses that I've leased, that they just pay apart and they have their own room, has been great success. I still have to help some with transportation because they hadn't saved up enough money for a car, but that's part of who we are. I provide them transportation to work, to the doctor, to Walmart on Saturday, and to church on Sunday. And they're giving passes, Friday, Saturday passes. My first part of my program, we don't do passes. We don't do cell phones. We don't do internet. Because I think they need to just sit down for just a little bit longer and think about who they need in their life again. But they do have access to a phone, family visitation once a month.
And the age, looking at age range is,
I have everything from 19 to 67. It's, I laugh and say I don't really want to take the 20-year-olds because they're not dumb yet. But I have a 20-year-old in my program. The older ladies are hard. Y'all, it's no joke. The older ladies are hard. The ladies who are disabled, who can't work. It's very hard to get disability and it takes time. But I have one right now that, I'm finding her work to do and she's there. She has a home. So the older population, the senior citizens of incarcerated there's gonna have to be a home pretty soon for people, because they don't have Social Security to rely on to pay at my sister-in-law's in the Nickel Center. They don't have money for that. They've never worked in their life. I've got people who are 40 years old that have never held a job in their entire life. So there's no Social Security to say, oh, that's going to help me with my retirement. So we're looking at a whole population, I think pretty soon, that really are going to be the new homeless because of their age and their lack of ability to manage retirement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else may have any questions? I don't see any. Ms. Vicky, again, we thank you for what you do. Thank you for agreeing to come and be a part of this hearing. I know you're glad that you that you were the third person. We've been pretty brutal here this morning, but that's what we're here for. It's not
Yeah.
for comfort meeting, is to make sure that, again, that, we're doing our very best.
Right.
To make sure that those individuals who get out
Mhm.
have a better chance than what they did when they went in. So,
That's our
again, we
whole
thank you.
passion. And it's exciting that y'all took time to hear from us today. Because sometimes you kind of feel like you're out there by yourself. I feel like, I tell everybody, I feel like a little bitty fish in a great big pond. But for the little fishes I help, it's important. And so there are a lot of good people out there wanting to help. Like I say, I have been amazed at the community in 16 years I've been able to build around these women. At Christmas, somebody adopts each woman in my program and provides $150 worth of Christmas presents. They come and do Christmas parties. They come take them out to dinner. They'll meet somebody. I got a job coming up. It's somebody they'll like and they'll give them a job. It's all about getting community mixed in with people because they'll learn that they're going to love them and that they're good people. One of the very first girls in my program got a job with my best friend at an insurance agent. 16 years later, she's still working there and has managed to get herself straight. And she spent 10 years in and out of jail doing drugs. So there is definitely great hope for people coming from incarceration. If we can just get the right help to them for the right amount of time. It has to be an investment of 6 months to a year, really, with these people to help them get on their feet. Thank y'all for so much. I hope you enjoy. That's my newsletter from last year, but it does kind of give you a good vision of it. Thank y'all.
Thank you. We have Jeffrey Belk, who's the Mississippi Parole Board Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Belk, if you would make your way to the podium.
All right, I appreciate you reaching out the other day and letting us participate in these hearings. I think while the parole board has limited involvement in the transitional housing discussions that have gone on today, we do share the same concerns and passion around it. And if it shows anything, we've got the entire parole board came to participate and listen to what was going on here. We do share a lot of the same concerns here. We've got, I guess, two key interfaces that I see that the parole board has with this is at the time of a parole board hearing, there's some folks that come before us and have no address. So even though legally we're allowed to grant parole, they cannot be paroled without an approved address. So we've been working with MDOC to set them off 6 months and try to get those addresses taken care of. Of those, there's multiple reasons. I think there's a little bit of discussion around, not all of them are transitional housing issues. We see probably about 8 to 10 a week that don't have addresses. Some of those are, they've got addresses, they just failed to get them loaded in the system. Some of them have gotten addresses denied ahead of a hearing. And then you've got some that are awaiting, transitional housing issue. Got some, there was a little bit of discussion there a few minutes ago around the vital documents. I'm going to tie that back into the transitional housing and the addresses here. One of the things that the parole board has been actively trying to get the infrastructure working with MDOC in place is to execute and fulfill the obligations of presumptive parole. To get there, part of the process is the parole board has to approve the discharge plan, or they have to have a hearing as opposed to go out presumptively paroled. One of the things we've encouraged MDOC to do on the one of the requirements we've asked to put on is the discharge plan is also those vital documents. Do you have your vital documents? If you don't have them, what is the plan to get them if you are to be paroled? Where are you going to live? And do you have a job? What type of employment are you going to have? So we're looking at those three things as part of that discharge plan. We have to review and approve ahead of being presumptively paroled. So we're trying to help and address that early on. And then, like I said, too, the other factor there is the time of a regular parole hearing. If you don't have an address in the system, then we're going to deny you 6 months and let him work on that. Hopefully when you come back up again in 6 months, you're not caught in the same situation with no address. Now, if you do get an address, we're going to expedite those hearings and get them on it as soon as possible. With that said, I guess the rest of the thing, I guess it's just going to be, here for questions and answers to what you're.
Yeah, I have a question. When we talk about this 6 months set off, because they don't have an address, these type of things. So from hearing from the housing providers here today, and knowing that they are working to make sure that what you all are wanting to see is happening, would that help with the paroling of individuals, knowing that you have these type of providers out there that's willing to help?
Oh, yes, it definitely is, because you're going to get a multitude of reasons of why there may not be an address at the time of parole hearing. Some people may come in and have, their family may not want them. They may have burned all those bridges with mama, daddy, brother, sister, cousins, aunts, uncles, and everybody's denied the addresses they've put in, and they have none. Which at that point, you would hope that they've been proactive and have reached out to one of these transitional facilities and already working on getting them accepted there. If it's already in the system and awaiting approval, or we see there's a current reach out for one of these transitional facilities, that will not hold up the parole.
Would you also agree that there needs to be other places available around the state to versus everything being, I guess, more or less in a common area?
Yes, that definitely, we see the need for that, to have it spread out a little bit more. I think there was discussion earlier about, if someone wants to speak up for Jackson County here, I'm sure Senator Wiggins is probably still on the phone. But if someone wants to, part of their case plan at MDOC, if they want to go through the welding program and they want to locate or relocate to Jackson County and work at Ingalls, then of course, number one, they need all their vital documents, everything else there to actually get employment, completed the welding program, but then a lot of them may not have a place to go there. So that would be, like I say, a limiting factor. What we want to do is make sure that, you know, as MDOC is moving from incarceration to rehabilitation, that all these programs and processes and things in place have helped that individual set themselves up for success. And that would be a key part of that too, is if that was the only thing holding them up to be successful and to go work at Ingalls, you know, and be a productive member of society there, then by all means, that is definitely a need we see.
Other question I have is that based on your time as serving as chairman, and of course, we know that our incarceration rates at one time was lower than everyone else was. Well, not lower than everyone else was, but we weren't number one. And I think we're hovering around being number one again as far as population and all that, as far as number of people incarcerated. But my question is that, do you think, what percentage of that leading number would you say is because of lack of housing or addresses? Would you say that that's a contributing factor to the release rate not being as low as it is?
We're going to grant parole on a, you know, individual basis, and that is a factor in there. Our current parole rate for the last 3 quarters is 62%. You know, last year it was 40. We're getting more information. We're getting more, you know, people through credible programs. Working MDOC is helping us get that data we need to see people have set themselves up for success and send them these programs. So that parole grant rate is up to 62%, so 20% more than it was last year because of a lot of the things that have been going on. Of the ones when we have a hearing, and I think the numbers that I have here, through the 3rd quarter, we've had 5,607 parole hearings. You know, of that, 62% have been granted parole, so 3,481. We see on average 200, on a month, we see 623 cases. That's just parole hearings. That's not the revocation hearings. About, on average, 10 a week come before us that do not have an address.
So that's roughly
Not
about,
necessarily of the transitional housing issue, but just don't have an address. Period.
that's about 40 a month.
Yes. Of those, I would say on average, probably about 4 or 5% are actually more related to a transitional housing issue. Nobody, these addresses have been entered but denied. And that's, you know, of course, without transitional facility being entered into that facility, we will set them off for the 6 months, get that information back over to MDOC, and they will, Nathan Blevins, who was here earlier, and those will start working on getting that transitional housing piece taken care of based on bed availability.
My next question is, and this is tied to transitional housing as well, is that what's the percentage of those individuals that you have to see have probably absconded because they didn't report, because they didn't have anywhere else to go after this brief period of this brief temporary housing issue?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the revocation hearing. So if somebody, no matter what time period, if they've absconded for 5 years and are finally picked up on that warrant, then, you know, first time they will go to TBC for, you know, 90 days. When that 90 days is up, they cannot be released out of MDOC system without an approved address. You know, so once they're in the system, to get back out, you have to have that approved address. And that's where, usually by someone reaching out to the parole board about, hey, why hasn't my son, why hasn't my client, why hasn't so-and-so been released? They've served their 90 days TBC. We will go back in and look and see that that was mainly the reason why they absconded in the first place. They had burned all the bridges, had nowhere to go. And they're still having that same problem of getting an address. So at that point, the powers that be with Nathan Blevins and them will go in and attack and see if they can find a transitional facility that will take them. Some of them have been through these transitional facilities before, and they will not take them back. So having more options and different levels of options out there would be a good thing. Because basically those people are stuck just like the ones that were granted parole before that did not have an approved address that stayed in limbo until they could get one.
Anyone else? Senator Norwood, you recognize.
Just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess just a couple of questions. You said that you have approximately 40 individual cases that are submitted to parole, whereas do not have a permanent address to, that they would be paroled to.
Yes, and they were denied solely for that purpose of not having that address, yes.
Is that a prerequisite for them being granted parole?
So this goes back, it's not a prerequisite to be granted parole, but they have to have an approved address before they can be released on parole.
So if an individual is come before you for parole, they do not have a permanent address, then they return back to custody of the Department of Corrections.
Yes, so that's where the issues were a couple of years ago, is that people without addresses were being granted parole. They went over to, over on the MDOC side and were stuck in limbo, and the Department of Justice got all everybody because they could not be released because they did not have an address. So they had been granted parole, they were over there, they were in limbo, and I think DOG, I think you probably know more about this than I do, Chairman. But, so to help MDOC with that issue is that we are not going to grant parole unless they have, at least, it doesn't have to be an approved address when they come before us, but a current address in the system.
Well, why would they be submitted for parole if if they can't be, they're not going to be granted parole? Why would they be submitted for parole knowing that they do not have a permanent address to be released to?
I think you would have to get more specific answers from MDOC on that. The parole board runs and puts out a 4-month look-ahead docket based on parole eligibility dates and distributes that. And people work that and do their due diligence ahead of that parole eligibility hearing to have all this stuff in order. So there's still, there's shortages of caseworkers. You have people that are incarcerated and being held at a county facility where there is no caseworker or no one to get that information. It may be turned over to a local sheriff or chief deputy, and they don't know where to get it to. So there's, some contributing issues that are being addressed as the MDOC is getting the feedback on the ones that we have denied parole based on the address issue, to backtrack it and find out why that wasn't done ahead of time.
But you would agree that there's cost that's associated with that preparation on both sides, MDOC and parole board, that could be avoided if the individual has not met the threshold or the standards for release if that case is not presented.
So not actually having an approved, yeah, I agree with that, because if they go out and approve every address before they come before the parole board, you have wasted a lot of time, energy, and resources doing that. This is at the time of the parole hearing, they just have to have a current address of where you will be paroled to if you were granted parole. And that's just a matter of entering it in the system. It's not going out, verifying, confirming that it would be approved.
Okay.
It's supposed to happen, once they've been granted parole, that due diligence will be done to actually reconfirm that address.
And I'm not sure, but you have prepared notes that you could make available to the committee that you the data that you.
Yeah, I can get you whatever data you need. I can work with the chairman to get that and specific data you need and what format, and be more than happy to get you that.
Okay, if you would, I would like to have a copy of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have one question, then Senator Sparks have a question. You talked about inefficient time. I think it's being one of the barriers for not granting parole. So my question is, if some of those individuals have been there long enough and do have some job skills and people are ready to hire, do you think that saying that they haven't gotten enough of this time in MDOC should prevent them from the possibility of having somewhere to go and having the possibility of getting a job?
So that's where the importance of the case plan be done within the first 90 days of incarceration, and the parole board has that information at hand. There's been, until recently, we did not have that information. We did not have a case plan, letting the parole board know what that individual's needs were and what the plan forward is. They could be successful now to go out the door versus needed some more, whether it be drug and alcohol, GED, trade or skill that they wanted to get. So that's why it's the importance that now that we're starting to get these case plans and getting more information, you're right, we can make those determinations of, already got a job, got a place to go, made a mistake in life, but you've got a good support network waiting for you outside. That tells the parole board right there that you've set yourself up for success to get back out.
Okay.
But without knowing that through the case plans or other means, then, we've in the past had a tendency to err on the side of caution.
Okay, thank you, Senator Sparks. Your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Belt, the presumptive parole that we're talking about, that only applies to certain offenders.
Correct. Basically, you're nonviolent, which is about 2/3.
And are you seeing a percentage, or is there any percentage you can give us of people who have come before you this year that have had a plan presented to you that's been approved or even disapproved by the parole board? Have y'all voted on any plans?
No.
So you technically
We have
haven't had
not
any
got there
plans.
yet. We're working with MDOC to get that infrastructure in place so that we can do that. That is our ultimate goal.
What do we lack when you say infrastructure?
Right now, the commissioner could probably speak to this too, but the information within Offender Track is not quite what it needs to be. So what they've done, there's a outside agency that has a program called Pocket, POKKET, I think, but the plan is to take and upload that data into there, do the case plans there, track the success of the inmate there, have the case plans and the discharge plans in there to document that the parole board has reviewed them and approved them and everything's in line.
And I realize this may be a question more so for MDOC because you can't vote on something that hasn't been presented to you. But is Pocket new? Is this the new technology that we're trying to have that puts this into a format where you can pre-approve and then you'll see that all the boxes are checked when they're eligible and then you don't have to have a hearing? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. It's an existing program. I think, and I can't remember Louisa's name. She appeared at your last hearings there. She has utilized that program in multiple states. The purpose of it is to, once you get the case plans going, track them in MDOC. It's also capable of following upon release and helping the parole and probation agents with their piece and follow up. And integrated that way. But yes, it would track everything and let us know via report kind of concept right now, that these people have had no triggers to have a hearing and should be able to go out presumptive parole. They've met all the requirements.
But even if that went live in January, we've still got a lag because you've got people that are coming before you
Yes.
that you've not viewed their plan. So do you know, is the expectation to start presumptive parole with new entrants and then work backwards into people who are already in the system? Or do you have any?
So what we're trying to do right now is to, while we're waiting for the infrastructure and everything else to get in place and all the bugs worked out, is to run both of those in parallel. We've been able to work with MDOC to do separate reports of violent offenders and the presumptive parole eligible. Those are being worked in, those that have time, maybe a year, 2 years before parole eligibility, worked into this pre-release academy and other programs and things that take place. But you're right. There's people that, as we've discussed in prior hearings, that have just been incarcerated yesterday that are instantly eligible for parole. There is no time. So the request there is what you were, the chairman was asking a while ago. Some of those that pop up instantly, if they will do the case plans and do the quick hits, here's a quick assessment of this person. They've got their high school diploma. They may have some college. They don't have a drug and alcohol problem. They got a job waiting on them. And here they got an address in the system. Those quick hits like that case plan can be quickly approved. The discharge plan quickly approved. They either go on out without the hearing. Most of those will probably end up having a hearing, the quick hits like that, but they should flow right through because they've done everything that the parole board is looking for to grant parole anyway.
And assuming you have a parole board hearing on someone, I'll get away with the presumptive part, kind of what we're doing today, is if they have met the criteria of the parole board, but for an address that you generally are giving them a 6-month set off, you're getting 8 to 10 of those a week. Now, of the 8 to 10 a week you're getting with no addresses, are you saying that's 8 to 10 people that would have gotten parole, or 8 to 10 people that just didn't have an address?
Would have gotten paroled except for they did not have the address.
All right, so we're setting off, in a 6-month period, 250 people specifically for not having an address. But understand you said you would expedite
Yes.
potentially to get them back. So that leads me to the question of why wouldn't you parole them, knowing that the actual release, the door opening, cannot occur until they have an approved address, and not have to set them off for 6 months? Because I believe you said you could grant parole. They're not going to get out.
Yes, we can grant.
And this is where the DOJ apparently complained,
Yes.
which it sounds like to me we're arguing semantics here because I'm locked up or I'm not locked up. But if you granted parole, your parole rate looks better.
Yeah. Met the numbers, we play the game. Yeah.
But we've got a big stack of people that are still in custody because they don't have an address.
Yeah. And they're piled up on that end rather than, so the goal is with these case plans being done within the first 90 days and the discharge plans started early. There is no reason they shouldn't have already gotten an address or found out that they need transitional housing way ahead of the parole hearing or the presumptive parole thing. And that's the goal, is to, I think the commissioner had said, there should be no reason why anybody should come before the parole board without a current address entered in the system. And moving those processes ahead of the game is what we're trying to do.
But until we get there, we obviously have the system we have today. And I guess my concern is you have an address that's submitted, maybe I list 4, and somebody, I assume it's probation and parole, is going to vet those addresses. You're not vetting addresses at the
We're not vetting addresses. The issue comes into no one has loaded an address and there's not one in the system at the time of parole. Not that there's one that's been entered that hasn't been approved yet. So the concern is they don't want to have one now when we grant parole. Are they ever going to have one?
And I get that, that's category one, that's what.
So we're also taking that list of ones that got denied parole solely because of the addresses, and we're getting that back to MDOC, and they're diligently working it after the fact. We're probably seeing about half to 3/4 of those coming back, and they say these people now have an approved address. We're not waiting until the 6 months is over with to see them again. We're putting them back on the next available docket, and after we validated that was the only reason, and going ahead and expediting their parole hearings.
Right, and I appreciate that, but that's kind of the category one where we could give them parole and they get an address and out the door they go, and they don't have to come back to you, but we believe that was getting us in trouble in another area. But what I guess I'm talking about is you grant someone parole who does have an address. There's a lag time. A lot of people don't realize you have a parole hearing and you grant parole. You don't walk out like in the movies. It's 2 months maybe out there, or because somebody has to approve your address. Who does that?
Legislatively, we're required to see them the month ahead of their parole eligibility date. So you're right. Theoretically, I mean, it's not really 30 days, but you could make, see them 30 days ahead of time. They cannot be released until that parole eligibility date has come and gone.
Yes, but they also, in that window, have to have whatever address you relied on as a parole board approved.
Yes.
Now, if that address is not approved, they don't get parole.
They will go with option 2, 3, 4, and that's where Nathan Blevins group and them come back in and diligently, and the caseworkers try to get those other addresses, or if they find out within that, 30-day window of when we grant parole, when they're supposed to go out, that if they need transitional housing.
Yeah, that was where I'm headed, is if none of their addresses are any good, the next chance is transitional housing.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Then we get to what I've heard today, and I've been educated quite a bit today on transitional housing, is that transitional housing is an acceptance process as well. It's an acceptance. Nobody has a right to transitional housing, and we've heard that that's even a vetting application process.
Yes.
So what are we doing with people who transitional housing says, we don't want you, or we're not taking you, excuse me, and they have no address? They're stuck in limbo?
They're stuck in limbo. I had one that came up the other day, was brought to our attention. He had gone to the TVC for 90 days, and every address he turned over, was getting denied. Turns out his mom's address was where he was wanting to go, had in the system, and had a couple others too. And she passed away. Sister moved in the house, said, it's my house, you ain't coming here. And, then all of a sudden he had no place to go, and everything else was rejected. Nathan Blevins' group worked diligently and actually got him accepted into a facility. It probably would not have helped if there wasn't a lot more details and, concern there.
Because that's, this is mostly about transitional housing, and there are some of us who were probably under the impression, because 2 years ago, they wanted a bunch of money for 800 transitional beds. In our mind, my mind maybe only, we hear, gosh, if we had the beds, out the door these people would go. Now I'm hearing, no, they wouldn't. It's only if a transition, and every one of them stood up there and said $20 is not enough. It's a little bit like our regional jails barking about what it costs daily. That's probably a bad choice of words. I'll regret that. But about what they get daily versus the quote daily cost of incarceration, and they claim to be $20 cheaper. But they don't tell you they only take medium custody inmates. They only take healthy inmates. So one of the concerns I have, at least coming out of here today, is what do we do with the hard cases? Because if you don't accept them into your transitional housing, the parole board hands are tied. These people are going to flat time. Then I think Senator Norwood's issue comes to play, is that they're going to get released on the streets of Jackson with nothing, with nowhere to go. And so maybe an additional concern about transitional housing is true transitional housing that's accepting, I guess, the folks the other people won't accept, because otherwise you're stuck, correct?
Yeah, because you're going to have different levels of transitional housing for these, everybody wants the first time drug-free shoplifter.
Right.
But you're gonna have, like you said, some of these hard cases that have either gone through some of these other facilities and absconded or caused problems or gotten kicked out that they will not take back. And that's their option. And you're gonna have to have some places that will take these. We've had, if memory serves me, I think it may have happened more, but there are 2 cases that come to mind this year over the address issue and the transitional issue, that the inmates just went ahead and sent a letter saying, which is their right, I do not want to be paroled. And they had like 6 to 9 months before their end of their sentence because of that same issue.
Go flatten it
Place to go, nobody wanted them. I just don't want to waste your time. I'll sit here till I get out.
And the transitional housing, if they say you must go, you have violated our rules, then probation and parole is going to be notified, then that's going to be a parole revocation.
He gets picked up, he absconds, he goes to TVC, 90.
But when he goes to TVC,
180, or gets reincarcerated, and
because the TVC has the same problem from what I'm hearing from you. Because I assume TVC, Technical Violation Center, it's a little less cumbersome. You're incarcerated, but I had no idea when your 90 days were up at a TVC that you, again, have to go through this whole process of an address, or you're stuck just like you were coming out of MDOC.
yes, it's my understanding from asking that question that multiple people at MDOC different times, the same consistent answer comes back is they have to, TVC, they have to meet the same requirements, standard requirements to get out, which is that approved address, just like you would if you were being paroled.
So if a guy rolls over his 90 days in the TVC, are we shipping him back to MDOC?
No, they're actually keeping him at TVC. I asked that too the other day.
What about the guys that get a TVC sentence? Because again, I get picked up for a violation. I'm gonna come before the parole board for a revocation hearing. You decide to give me 30 days, 60 days in the TVC. I've set 70 days in the county jail. Am I free to leave? Or do I have to have an address?
To quote my good friend Marlo Stewart, I think the statute says your time starts today, but that's up to MDOC. They calculate whether that time served or how long you've been sitting there, everything else falls into play.
But technically, I
don't-
could walk out of the county jail, but I couldn't walk out of the TVC without an address.
I think county jails have to follow, if you're in MDOC, if MDOC prisoner in MDOC custody, whether that be at a county jail on behalf of, or what, you've still got to have that address.
Because I know a lot of clients never make it to the TVC because they've served their time before they're technically adjudicated to the TVC.
Now, I think the only time the scenario you were talking about, and I would definitely need to fact check this, but it's my understanding though, that if they're still at the county facility and we continued them on parole, they may be eligible to go on out, as opposed to if they were at CMCF and we continued them on parole, they still would have to jump through hoops and wouldn't immediately be released. I think it was easier if they would continue them on a revocation at a county facility. That's easier for them to, quicker for them to get out.
Couple of quick things and I'll be done. It's probably a question for another day, but the time served, not adequate time served reason for denial of parole. I think the chairman had asked about that question earlier. It doesn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about now. But when someone is in fact paroled and they pick up a new charge and they're facing a parole revocation, and because we've heard so much today is about drug addiction, and the judge wants to sentence them into drug court, they're not allowed to do that because that may revoke them from the parole. Now we're double jurisdiction because the judge has the jurisdiction over his drug court participants to jail them or, give sanctions, drug court sanctions.
Which I guess is more of on a case-by-case basis, but if someone in that scenario is on parole, they violated their parole once they've been arrested for committing that new crime. They haven't been convicted yet, but they violated by it, so they would have to come before, the warrant would go out, come before the parole board. During that process, I would hope MDOC and the judge and other people that were wanting to do diversion and all that would be having conversations while they're trying to do their due diligence, get all the paperwork together, to have those conversations that would say the recommendation to the parole board, since we have to, have a revocation hearing or even never have it. But if you're going to have the revocation hearing, our recommendation is to continue him on parole to go to drug court.
All right,
So we got that leeway based on a recommendation, but it kind of goes back to some of his other discussions. If we don't know about it,
all right.
we're acting blind.
Because it's not really transitional housing, but they're staying out. They're potentially going to be monitored by the drug court judge who can
Yes.
violate them and send
At
them.
that point, he brings them back and he sentences them, and they've gotten convicted while on parole and come right back. So, yeah.
And then the last question, and I think this was brought up about complex cases. I think the last presenter from a transitional housing talked about medication. There's some people
Mhm.
that have such complex medication issues. We passed some legislation in the last couple of years about parole to a nursing home facility. Now, that would be maybe not a transitional housing issue. It's a potential permanent housing issue. But I would say some of the hardest cases, because transitional housing is not going to accept somebody who probably qualifies for nursing home parole. Have you had opportunity to visit any of those cases where someone is parolable to a nursing home facility?
So we have not yet. There's been a couple of there's 2 nursing homes currently approved, one on the coast, one up in Greenville to accept. We haven't seen any yet. I think while they were working on it, the feedback from Dr. Donovan was, I think 2 of the ones it met all the criteria he was trying to get in front of us, unfortunately passed away. So things stopped at that point. The other was the question of whether habitual offenders were eligible for the medically frail parole, because that statute on the habitual says they're not eligible for parole under this or any other form of parole, which that's another form of parole. So the Glenn Finch and AG's office just sent, Commissioner inquired, they sent an opinion back and says there's no conflict. They could be eligible for the medically frail parole. So they're gathering up that information right now. I think though the only question is that statute says that they have to meet that definition of medically frail that's in one of the statutes somewhere, it points to it. And that says they have to basically have 6 months to live, kind of the hospice situation, or there's no other known cure for what they have. So it's kind of tight. So we've also talked to the commissioner about, when the paperwork comes through for the parole board, that, if someone meets that medically frail status, but yet they're an orderly in the hospital and getting trustee status, that's a complete conflict. How can you,
Right.
So they've got the first wave after we got that opinion back from the AG's office. We're waiting to get our first ones before us that meet all that. So the infrastructure in this case is in place. We just haven't had any of the candidates come through yet.
Okay. Well, and then this has obviously been helpful to me today because I kind of lump transitional housing in one category. And the truth is we've got those who are accepted and they're needing transitional housing because they can't get an address.
Mhm.
Those who are rejected by transitional housing who right now apparently have nothing. And then those who are medically frail who transitional housing would reject because they can't take care of their medical needs. But we have a pathway that appears maybe is available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And like I say, we appreciate y'all letting us participate.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I think that's all the questions from this committee. We appreciate you all coming. You brought your whole team with you. So
Yeah, well, like I said, we feel just as passionate about a lot of these issues too, so it was important enough for all of us to be here.
thank you. All right, last but not least, we have Mr. Forrest Thigpen, who's here with Empower Mississippi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and member of the committee. My name is Forrest Thigpen. I'm the Senior Advisor at Empower Mississippi. At Empower, we focus on 3 issue areas. all of which affect the topic today: education, justice, and work. One thing that strikes me about the topic of transitional housing is how intertwined it is with the issue of so many others, as we've even heard today. And really the goal, we talk about reducing recidivism, but really what that means is or should mean, is that we're trying to achieve the dual goals of public safety and personal renewal. Because public safety is generally what we think of as we don't want people to commit more crimes, but the reality is that people are much less likely to recidivate if they've had some type of personal renewal. The most effective of that is spiritual renewal, and the research shows this. But even beyond that, there has to be some type of change within the person to choose a different path. Same time, including the housing part, we have to make sure that they have the opportunity and the skills and the treatment that's needed to actually pursue those goals. And Senator Sparks earlier said, just a few minutes ago, said something about the need for multiple types of transitional housing, because you do have people who really just need, they're out, they have good prospects for a job, maybe they've already secured a job, but not yet enough money to put a down payment for or first and last month's rent. And so they just need just a little short amount of time. Others, whether it's family issues or personal issues, they need a longer period of time. And then there are some who need serious interventions that might even need to stay for a longer period of time. So it would be worth looking at the possibility of even having adjustable or very tiered levels of reimbursement for the different types of housing that are available. Also, a couple of things that have been brought up, and I don't think I heard an answer on the number of people who have been paroled but have not been released, or essentially have been paroled but have not been released. From what I understand, it's about 400 people who are in prison would be released if they had a place to go, or who have already been approved, subject only to that. It's my understanding. Also, we've heard a lot about the $20 a day. My understanding was that the purpose of that, at least originally, was that the MDOC would pay $20 and they expected, based on a $40 cost. And then the facility was responsible for either raising the other 20 or charging the participant, the resident, the other $20 when they had a job. Just last night, and so I don't know if this is still current, I mentioned this to the commissioner earlier and he was not aware of this. And so they're going to be looking at this. So I don't mean this as a criticism currently, but with the RFP, I heard recently from a facility that is a ministry, and they are choosing not to participate in any MDOC in the bid. It's called an invitation for bids, but it's really an RFP because there are so many requirements. First place is 47 pages that is this invitation for bids. And there are so many requirements on it. One was the 6-month maximum, and maybe that's just all that MDOC would pay. The way I read it was, it looked like if you're going to participate in this program, then it's a maximum of 6 months. But what it did say for sure is that no one with who is currently on parole or probation can take part in the service, can provide any of the services under the contract. Well, the business model of this ministry is that a big part of what they do is teaching and discipleship. And so they have people who are there, who are residents, who actually take part in leading some of those things. So it wasn't clear whether that means that that person is providing a service even though they are under parole. And in fact, this particular ministry, the leader of it is still on parole, because he had a long parole, and he's created this ministry that has had great success in the people that they work with. So that same RFP, even though the presumption, as I mentioned a minute ago, the presumption is that the facility will come up with the other part of the money. In this RFP, it says that the facility cannot charge any fees to the resident, which obviously would keep them from being able to charge the participant, the resident, from for the services that they provide. And the other thing that was in that this ministry couldn't accept is that there is a prohibition on having a resident or having the organization that is providing the services, the facility, to have outside contact with the other than just the services they're providing under the contract. They're not supposed to have outside interaction with the participant or their family. And again, the business model of this ministry is working with the family is part of helping to provide what the resident needs. So that if there is that family separation, that to work with the family to help get that relationship to the point where they can, where the person can actually move in with a family member. So again, those are things that the commissioner said they'll be looking at. So the other thing that I want to mention, and I know we're running short on time, but in the parole bill that y'all passed in 2021 that is up for reauthorization next year, the repealer is up next year, there was a requirement to do case plans that's been mentioned here today. And the case plans can be done in a variety of ways. And as I started looking into this for a reason I won't bring up today, but I found that there are ways of doing case plans, that there's almost a science to it, not almost, there is a science to it, to where when a person is admitted, you can do what's called, I've had to practice this, criminogenic risk needs assessment. Criminogenic meaning the likelihood to recidivate at some point. Risk means if they get out, what are the risks they face, which likely could be going back to the place where the only place they've known, and they would likely be involved in crime. The needs part of that, the risk needs assessment, is what do they need in order to avoid those risks when they get out. That would also include, drug treatment and that type thing. There is a way to do this that when they come in, that they do a full assessment, including what from what their childhood was like to what led them to crime, to whether, and I think this is relevant here, is whether when they get out, if the relationships there are such that they'll be able to have a place to go. And if not, in this case plan, it would make sense that whatever training they get, they can know ahead of time. The caseworker can know ahead of time, we're going to need to have some place other than their home for this person to move. And then whatever training they're doing, whether it's welding or whatever, can plan ahead so that they'll know that this person is going to need some other kind of housing because they're going to a place they've never been before. So again, with the things that the department is doing now with what Mr. Plum's doing and with the pre-release academy, I think is what it's called. All of those are changing things at the end of the process. And I know that they have started to implement the case plan in more in more detail. But it is important for it to be set out at the beginning that because of your background, these are the things, this is the plan. This is the training you need. This is the type of treatment you need that can also be used. It would obviously need to be updated before release, but then can also be used as a release plan that would include the housing and what they would need from housing. Which type of housing are they going to need? Is it just the transitional quick one, or is it more intensive? And then making sure that the place they go, if it needs to be more intensive, that they actually can do the alcohol and drug treatment that this person needs. And so the criminogenic risk needs analysis assigns a risk to say this person is likely to commit another crime, this person is less likely, but based on both of those, let's set a path. So the other things I mentioned that y'all can do is a couple of these have been mentioned. The work release program it needs to be expanded. Right now, it only allows, as you mentioned, 25 people at CMCF. What this is, for those who don't know, is it allows a person to actually have a real job, not an in-prison job, but a real job working for a private employer. And with the earnings that with the money they earn, which is regular wages of whoever else works there as a starter, part of that money goes to pay their fines and fees. Part of it goes to the department to pay the cost of the program itself, of getting people to a job and back and doing the other things that are necessary. And then part of it goes into a savings account so that when they get out, they actually already will have money to pay the first and last month's rent and maybe to buy a junker or clunker car. And that needs to be expanded because, and they're not here anymore, the ladies have said that they would not be in favor of a person going to work right away. This helps, the work release program helps with that as well because they're already used to going to work. So there's so many benefits of that, that if it's done right and if it's supervised correctly without too much regulation, but obviously enough to protect public safety and to protect from corruption, that is something that I think would address a lot of the needs, including ones that are related to housing. What I don't think has been mentioned here, at least except in passing, is the data system needs of the Department of Corrections. As I understand it, the system, it was built in the 1980s. And I believe as of next year, the company that services it is no longer going to provide updates. And Ms. McAfee, who's here, holds the thing together with bubble gum and baling wire. I don't know how it has kept running all these years, but somehow there needs to be money provided to them to build and buy a new system that will take some time to put together. But just like with the parole board needing accurate information, so too for if somebody leaves prison, it would be clear in there whether they have all their documentation, and then whatever there is, that record and whatever the needs are would be part of the release plan and could go to the housing facility so that they would know, okay, this is somebody that we could take or that we couldn't. I did hear from a ministry, not the one I mentioned earlier, who stopped working with MDOC because they could only handle a certain number of people and a certain type of, they could only provide services of a certain type. But MDOC was sending them people who didn't fit, and so they finally just gave up. Now, what I heard Mr. Blum say earlier sounded like they're not doing that anymore. So, but those are all things that are worth looking into. But if there was an accurate data system that showed, I was really surprised to find out that the data system is really hit or miss on whether somebody has taken a class or has gotten certain treatment, that it's really kind of up to whether the caseworker remembered to bring it in, to put it in the system. I did talk to somebody who is on parole, who transferred from one facility to another, and somehow the records disappeared. And I think that was maybe from a local facility to the state. But if there was a robust data system, data collection system, it would help at every stage along the way. So that needs attention. The last thing I'll mention is that y'all passed, the Senate has passed this a couple of times, the Fresh Start Act that would prohibit licensure agencies from denying a license to someone simply because they had a criminal record, unless that record relates directly to what that license is for. So if it was embezzlement, then the CPA board could deny that license based on their record, but it wouldn't be an automatic thing. That there is a Fresh Start Act now that only applies to a few agencies. So I would encourage y'all to take that up again. It didn't pass in the House only due to a point of order from somebody who didn't like the bill. Otherwise, it passed the Senate unanimously and would have passed the House overwhelmingly. So I encourage y'all to do that again, so that with the cosmetology board, they could deny a license for the very people that are being trained for cosmetology. And so, I mean, I think the commissioner is taking care of that because he's working with the cosmetology board. But I'm using that as an example to say, we can train them, have all the training we want to, but for certain professions, it could very well be they get out and the board that does the licensure denies that simply because they have that record. So we need to correct that through expanding the Fresh Start Act. I think that's it.
Well, thank you, Forrest, for coming. And I've said some of the same things that you've said in regards to record keeping and those type of things. I do know that in this day and age, where we have NCIC. So, which basically says that if I'm in California driving and I get pulled over for a driving offense, they can enter my driver's license or my license plate into this database, and it collects, and immediately they get a response back to say, no, he's not wanted in Mississippi, or he's good to go in Mississippi, so that everything is good. Either they can let me go or write me a fine, but they know instantly what else is on my record, whether I'm wanted, not wanted, and all this. So I agree that there should be a better system of tracking individuals from local to state or wherever they go to with that kind of, if it's available all over the place, then why aren't we using that? So I agree with you. And that helps not just the system, but it helps the individual. And it does those things.
That's right.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly on this, on this word that I'm not going to try to use that you say that you've been practicing on pronouncing. I'm gonna let you make it with that one, but I agree with that as well, is that, we need to start doing exactly what you said early on. The day that they get there, we need to start setting all this up so we'll know what direction this person needs to go, because, it very well may that this person may not need to be in this particular class. This is better suited for you based on what we've gotten.
That's right.
And we're not getting, but if you could take both of those and put them together, and I know that as smart as we are with technology now, then we can put all those things together instead of having 3 or 4 different places where this is entered, so that when we do hit this button, we know that, hey, this is where this person is.
Yeah.
And this is where they need to be headed.
Yeah, and I do want to be clear. I greatly admire the commissioner and what he's doing, and there's so much that they have to do. So in bringing this to you, I don't mean this to say, well, why haven't they done that? They've been doing a lot, and it's very good. So, but to the extent that there may be a need for legislation, especially as the parole bill is coming up for reauthorization next year, I wanted to make sure that you were aware of it.
And thank you also for speaking on the pilot program that we started. You know as well as I do, when I started talking to everyone about that pilot program, my intention was to have it in all of our facilities so that everybody can have those that wanted to can have the opportunity to be able to do that. And I've had a lot of phone calls from industry from all around the state that say, hey, you know, we would like to have this offered
Yep.
as well. So thank you for mentioning that. And I hope that others are hearing this as well as how successful that has been. And I think again, too, that helps with our transitional housing. As you said, if these individuals already have a job skill and they already have a job, we don't necessarily need MDOC to be paying $20 for somebody to have a transitional house. We just need a place where these people can go to that will, you know, that would take these individuals in. Of course, they will have to pay rent and all that, but it's better than releasing them with nowhere to go and trying to go to an apartment complex like the other ladies where they're not going to rent to a felon and where they're not going to lease to a felon. So we need, all of those things is what I'm trying to get when we talk about transitional housing, is to make sure that they really have somewhere to go, even with a job or without, but we need somewhere for these individuals to be able to go. And that's why I'm trying to expand this whole thing, is to make sure that we cover it all and not leave anyone out.
Yeah.
Thank you again for that. Senator Sparks, you're the only one left with me in the committee, so you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know of anywhere that there's a software system that would do what you just explained we need to do?
Yeah, Louisiana has a system that, well, this is a cautionary tale too. They built a system that they put into place or tried to, and it failed. And so they had to start over from scratch. And so they have now built another system. They're still fine tuning, but it is a lot closer to what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you again, Forrest. Matter of fact, thank everyone for coming out today, and thank you all for staying this long. I know that it's not usual to have a meeting to go through lunch, but what I realized over the years is that if you had one, you had to break for lunch and come back, there's even fewer people that wants to come back. So thank you all for coming, and thank you all for staying. And I just want to mention too, for those ladies that came and talked about their housing and what they do, those were recommendations that was made by the Mississippi Reentry Coalition. And so we're trying to get input and buy-in from everyone. So my hat's off to them, the MDOC for coming, Parole Board, Mississippi, Empower Mississippi, and everyone that helped to make this meeting possible and a success of that. Thank you all for coming. And this will probably be our last meeting that we will have on transitional housing. And hopefully, with the help of my committee and others, we will try and put together some type of legislation that will address all that we've taken in the last two meetings. With that said, meeting is adjourned.